It's been a season full of drama and excitement. Some teams dominated from the opening green flag in Daytona, while others struggled and fought for redemption. Today, after almost 5 months of hard work and 4 rounds of racing, the ClubSport Series Championships all come down to this event. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from across the iRacing world, and welcome to RacespotTV's coverage of the Season 2 finale of the ClubSport Series powered by DGFX live from Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta, and Brazelton, Georgia. I'm Justin Prinzel on some of the booth for today's coverage is Nolan Rempel with Hugo Wee in the director's seat. The championships are tight, with multiple teams within 100 points coming into the final round of the 2019/Season 2 season. Let's start off with the prototype standings. All 5 teams in the top 5 will be in the race today, with Graphite Racing on top of the standings entering today's event, just above Sorth Racing Orange. WR Racing B, SK Motorsports, and SimRC DE Strawberry also come into today within 100 points. Every other team on the list not entered for the final round of Season 2 today. The sport class also is filled with drama for the season, and both the main and amateur championships. NAB Racing enters the overall championship points leader, with the overall amateur leader in Gold Racing Team White behind. Team Vikings Valhall, Huge Ass Gold, Fisher Motorsport all have somewhat of a chance to battle for the championship today. Huge Ass Blue, they've won the past 2 rounds on a recovery drive after a bad run at Laguna Seca at round number 2. Real Pixel Motorsport, Sim Sport News Racing, along with Torque Freak Avon Rise and Slow Racing Team round out the top 10. For the MX5 / the club class, it's been a season dominated by 2 teams for the majority of the year. World of Sim Racing Team IVRA ClubSport have won 3 of the first 4 rounds of the season. They enter 1-2 in the standings, with the World of Sim Racing Team Junior looking to try and defend for the amateur championship and have a hope for the overall championship. Gold Racing Teams enters today 4th. Real Pixel Motorsport finishes off the standings in the top 5, with Bombshell Motorsports falling out of the championship picture after a bad last round, not making the minimum laps required, with GT Temple Racing, Team Viking Sleipner, and Torque Freak Racing Maggots, along with LTP Racing, rounding out the top 10 for the club sport standings. For today's race, we're at a 12-turn circuit at Road Atlanta, a hot racetrack, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius, the track temp at the moment, with the air temp at 71 degrees Fahrenheit and rising. In sim time, 10:06, make it 10:07 a.m. with very low winds and a high amount of humidity here. A very challenging racetrack for the 4+ kilometers and 2.54 miles. We're about to see here 2 hours, 25 minutes of action. Let's bring in Nolan Rempel for today's action. A challenging track for any iRacer. Probably one of the most challenging tracks on the entire schedule for Season 2 this year for the ClubSport Series. Let's talk about some of the challenges these drivers are expected to see here. Nolan, welcome to the broadcast.
Hello, Justin, and thank you. It's so good to be here once again. I think probably one of the most difficult sections where we're going to be seeing a lot of incidents, especially early on, is the run from turn 1 all the way down the hill into turn 5. It's probably one of the most difficult sections of track, I would dare to say, in the entire world. If you say that you have not gone off there, well, you, sir, you are not telling yourself the truth, because I feel like just about every driver has gone off there more than a dozen times throughout their career, both sim racing and IRL. So one of the most difficult sections on this racetrack, to say the very least, and I would not be surprised if we saw first lap incidents there today.
That's a strong chance there. We've seen drivers in qualifying nearly flip themselves over in that specific section, especially with the weight shifting. Danger zones today include the exit at turn 5 at the end of the S's, where a lot of that rubber is onto those said rumble strips, along with the run down to 10A and 10B, as well as potentially through corner number 1. The challenges are about to be arisen here. Just about a minute left in qualifying for these drivers, with a lot on the line. The speeds have been quick as well. There's been a big difference just in the classes once more, 22 seconds from the MX5s to the prototypes. However, a lot of the top teams are within tenths of a second on the board.
It really is. We even saw in our Porsche class, I believe, a good majority of the field are within 4/10 of each other. So an incredibly tight field to go off of this championship round, and we're going to be seeing a lot of strategies being played out as well. I would not be surprised though if we saw teams using a much more aggressive strategy today, because a lot of these drivers, they really want to push hard and get whatever they can. But at the same time, we might see some more conservative strategies as well, because at the same time, for your championship leaders, they cannot afford to have a bad race today. One mistake, and it could be your whole championship thrown out the window.
For the fans watching us home as Gold Racing Team says hello to the tire barriers, let's quickly take a look at what's on the line for the championship. The top 3 teams, regardless of the class, for their Pro-Am or overall championship, will end up getting a fee-paid entry to the following season of the ClubSport Series powered by DGFX Racing, provided they meet the requirements for returning teams set forth for next season's regulations, depending on how they point out for that be able to get themselves into the next season locked up. On top of that, the top 3, regardless of class champions for the AM teams, will also get a fee-paid entry to the following season for the Endurance Series, provided they meet the requirements for the new teams for the DGFX Endurance Series as set forth in their requirements, depending on how today goes. So it's not just the team championships. It's also the matter of making sure teams punch their tickets to the next seasons, of whether it's the Endurance or the ClubSport seasons, to see if they keep on going for 2019. Few more drivers trying to finish up their qualifying times. 1 minute 18 seconds is left for the last car on track. It's Torque Freak Racing Maggots. They are currently sitting 4th on qualifying. Their lap time was a 1:36.445 when they recorded a lap time on their 4th attempt. It's Gianni Quintelier coming across the checker flag and doesn't end up picking up time. He actually loses a couple tenths on that attempt. He's the last driver to record a time, and that means one thing: checker flag is out here at Road Atlanta. The drivers are about to be all set to go for what will be a thrilling race today, Nolan.
Absolutely going to be an amazing race. It's going to be just as thrilling as we've seen for the first 4 rounds of action in this series. It's just been a phenomenal series. Honestly, probably one of the best series I've ever had the privilege of being able to commentate. It's one of the best road course racing series. If you want to see some good road course racing action, this is definitely the place to go. And with the championship fight shaping up the way it is, oh boy, I feel like there's going to be quite a few tempers that might be flying around today.
Yes, there's going to be a lot of intensity today. Some drivers from the MX-5s for the club class today already telling some of the faster drivers to be careful for one reason. There's a chance you can end off your race, especially in that treacherous turn 10A and B you see on your screen. But the drivers are all set to go. They're about to take the starting grid here for today's action, this 2.54-mile circuit. Let's take a look at your top runners in qualifying for the final round of Season 2 of the ClubSport Series. SimRC DE Strawberry will start off on the pole today with Patrick Young for the Proto class. SK Motorsport starts off on the outside, about a 10.5 off the pace. WR Racing B starts off third with Sork Racing Orange and Graphite Racing rounding out your top 5 for the Proto class. Then you have the Porsches, a part of today's sport class. As talked about a little bit, it's very tight in the top 10, separated by 4/10 for Porsche Bezel by Sork Rennsport Esports at the top. Bombshell Motorsport starts off on outside pole sitter. Team Vikings Valhalla starts off third, Racecraft Esports in the 4th position, with Gold Racing Team White, NAB Racing rounding out the top 6. SimSport News Racing will start off behind them with Fisher Motorsport 13th overall, 8th in the class. 9th in the class, Torque Freak Racing Avon Rise will start alongside Real Pixel Motorsport with Huge Ass Gold and German Sim Racing Friends in 17th overall. German Sim Racing Orange, Real Pixel Motorsport's second entry, round out the drivers in the sport class today. Then you have the club teams, which will start off with the world of sim racing machines in the MX-5s today. Their speeds comparable, just about 2/10 off for the top 2, with Gold Racing Team starting off third. Torque Freak Racing Maggots ended up getting 4th on the board, with Ava Ravatic rounding up the top 5. GG Temple Racing starts off in 6th position alongside them, 1 second back of the pole, with Real Pixel Motorsport's first entry in the 299. Round out the drivers allowed to qualify. 2 teams were not allowed to qualify and will start at the back of their respective fields. Huge Ass Blue will start at the back for the Porsches, while Bombshell Motorsports will start off last for the MX-5s. That is due to incident points throughout the season. The infraction points entering today for them, 16 in total, meaning they were not allowed to set a time.
And those infraction points, we saw them play into so many drivers' races, even at Silverstone for a couple of drivers in your Porsche and Radical Field as well. So it's the infraction points is really something you have to keep an eye out on, and it's probably the one race where you don't want to have too many infraction points, and unfortunately for some teams, it's the exact thing that they're going to be forced to see today.
Yeah, it's going to be a nerve-wracking race today from start to finish for the drivers. They'll start to separate themselves to their respective grids now. As we go around the circuit, we were talking a bit about the passing zones today. Passing zones you were talking about before we came on air, you're watching for turn 6 specifically, along with that run to turn 10 and turn B. The two areas where if you're able to either take advantage of the draft or take advantage of mistakes, Nolan.
And let's not forget the run down to turn 6 as well from the exit of turn 5. That's a big passing zone as well. Speaking of turn 5, see those curves on the outside just of your prototype field? Oh boy, you've really got to keep an eye on those curves, especially in your prototype field, because those curves, they have ended so many drivers' races. I have seen it time and time again. You get onto those curves, they look so inviting, but you get on there, you're going to be driving on ice.
Yeah, there's been so many teams over the years here on RacespotTV alone, even this year, that have gone across those rumble strips and ended up crashing in the end off of turn number 5 and into the inside barriers. As you can see, the prototypes leading their way now towards that run to turn 10A and turn B. Today's fuel limit, 60% for the Radicals, the Porsche 70%, MX-5's 55%. Remember, teams do have to make at least one driver swap. Minimum time they have to be in the seat is about 15-20 plus minutes for today's race. So the pressure is on for the drivers. There were a couple teams that did not have that driver limit. They don't want to make that same mistake today. They also don't want to make the mistake of losing the chance for the championship here today.
The championship is going to be on everybody's minds for every single one of these drivers. It's all they're going to be thinking of throughout the course of this race is what can I do to put a few extra tenths between myself and my championship contender behind.
Protos are coming in towards the final hill over turn 11 and 12. Safety car coming off the racetrack. Green flags up at the stand as they enter the restart zone for today's race. Off and away goes Lucas Stolzer. We're off and running here at Road Atlanta. Clean start for the top 5 as they already get single file. Glenn Reed for WR Racing B had the worst run through turn 1. Was able to get by cleanly as the Porsches now come their way into the restart zone for today. Green flags out for them as Porsche Basel by Sorg Rensport Esports is able to get clear. They're side by side through turn 1 though.
Still side by side, going to be coming in here for turn number 2. Looking really close for George Gruber and Eric Bordos on his right side. Meanwhile, the Miata field are beginning to get just about to get set off as well, going down through turn 1. They're also going to be side by side here for turn 1, Justin.
Yes, they are already a very clean start to this one for all the teams, really. Big checkup for GRT. However, they keep it off the back bumper. That was 5th spot in Matthew Smith. That driver you've seen hit the tire barrier in qualifying. That did him lose a little bit of time, though, because the check up to the S's. Everyone has gone through the track cleanly so far throughout the first lap. There's been side-by-sides here and there already, of course, but no one's had a major incident in this first lap whatsoever. Everyone's been nice and clean so far, as Ava Ravatic wants to make a move, can't make it stick.
Not quite able to make that work. People are going for moves early on. In your Porsche field, fighting for the lead as well. Kirk Crum trying to get around the inside, going into turn 10A. Not going to make that work. Rain Kirchhoff from Porsche Basel by Sorg Esports going hard on defense, going into turn 10A on lap number 1. So it'll be that number 168 Porsche car to lead lap number 1 in your sport field.
And it's going to be a long one for these drivers, even though it's 2 hours, 25 minutes. Estimated distance, 112 laps for the Protos. The sport class estimated 105-ish, 0.8 is now set onto the board. And the MX-5s, it will be higher up from there. You're looking to battle for second, though, for the Proto class. SK Motorsports trying to fend Sorg Racing Orange. And this is starting to get very close. The lead car is starting to run away, mind you, in the class.
We've got Andrew Foss going around here, Porsche field in the back for huge ass goal. He just went off into the tires on the exit of turn number 2. Got turned by Florian Hohn from German Sim Racing in the background there as well in the 137 machine.
Let's take a look at that. They were going side by side, in fact, entering the corner with German Sim Racing friends. Tried to dive in through the S's. That's not a passing zone, and it looks like that may have led to the mistake.
It just jumped over the curbs a little bit, came right up in front of German Sim Racing. Nothing he could have done. Tried to keep out of it, but nothing he could have done. And that 137 took a shot to the tire wall. He's got damage on his left front now. So that car going to be a little down on pace here. Doesn't look like he's got any suspension damage. He's going to have a long race ahead of him, though.
Yeah, that good to have that on the second lap of the day today. Back up to the class lead, though. Bombshell Motorsports' 186 is having a huge run right now. Just 2/10 off the lead at the moment, trying to battle for position. Kirk Crum behind the wheel of the Bombshell machine. You have Rene Kirchhoff behind the wheel of the 168. On top of that, there's a third car in this battle. Tor Anders Bervin is also entering the back end of this battle for the class lead.
And Tor Anders Bervin driving for Team Vikings Valhalla, one of the championship contenders in your Porsche field. Going to drive through turn number 5 now. Taking very good care, runs a little wide over the turn 5 curbs and just barely clips the dirt. Manages to keep that car on the racing surface, but he's going to lose a couple of tenths there to Kirk Crum right ahead of him.
How important is it to try and make sure you don't have that run across the curbs? Because you talked about the chance of getting loose across them. What if you don't get loose? You end up losing time like that. What do you do to try to mitigate that?
Well, I would say brake a little earlier, then go for a faster exit by just hugging that apron a little bit tighter on the corner. That's at least what the strategy I try to use whenever I come racing here is.
Let's take a look at those Miatas. Meanwhile, as you've seen, World of Sim Racing Team Juniors in the class lead with their senior counterparts falling behind. But one team that's having a good run so far is the one that's sitting in 5th. They just got passed last time by GT Temple Racing. It is Torque Freak Racing Megas. Look who's coming through here. Very quickly, much more quicker than I think expected by either of us. Lucas Dolzer saying hello to the MX-5's fields already, and we're only on lap 4 for him.
I was just going by, giving them a friendly little hello. We saw something similar at Silverstone, how we were surprised by how fast the Radicals began to lap these Mazda fields. As here comes the rest of the prototype field threading their way through. And they're going to have to work their way past these fighting Mazdas for the lead, and they're going to get through all safe and sound.
And just looking at the intervals last time by the stripe, it was 1:07 seconds back for the MX-5s, just heading to their 4th overall lap on the racetrack. Compared to those prototypes that came on through, they got the Porsches also coming on through. It's going to be tough to manage the traffic today. That was talked about by some of the drivers who were part of a test race just yesterday evening, where that was one of the main issues for drivers such as classes like this. Going through turn 1 and the S's especially, some of the MX-5 drivers saying, please give us space. We want to make sure we can finish this race clean.
It's going to be one of the most difficult sections of track to pass as well when you're trying to, keep from going a lap down or trying to let these lap cars through is going to be in that run from turn 1 all the way down to turn 5. And in fact, the prototype field, they hit the Miatas at exactly the perfect time between turn 5 and turn 10A. Probably one of the most preferable places you can really hit lap traffic on this track. It's just because it's so much easier to work your way through. But if you're in such a one-line section, such as turn 1 through 5, oh boy, you're going to be in for one heck of a time.
Looking on board with Dual Pixel Motorsport, huge run right now to try and move up to P9 as they go side by side. That SimSport News Racing powered by iZone Green that they've been trying to shuffle around. Huge Ass Blue is also falling behind there in that said battle you're looking on your screen. They've moved up to 10th as they've gone and shuffled around with those positions. Pardon me, Real. That was the other way around. Alex Cofford up to 10th, dropping back Real Pixel.
And dropping back a little bit, but these drivers, they're really going to have to find a way to work their way back up if they're going to have a chance of fighting for the championship lead. And it's going to be another thing that these drivers are going to be thinking of. I'm going to keep saying it again and again like a broken record. These drivers are going to be focusing on that championship, and they're really going to need every last inch of pace that they can get. Meanwhile, Andrew Fawcett, he is beginning to close that gap just a little bit more. So Fawcett putting the power down. He's looking to take back those spots.
Meanwhile, door slamming, they go through 10A and turn B, sent off into the grass goes Racecraft. Able to save it though is Clay sees, but my goodness, a heck of a door slam that time from George Gruber. They keep on going though. It looks like he did serve a bit of a slowdown in the grass. He is still slowing down though down the straight.
And that's going to check up this entire Porsche field in the back here. Greg Gruber, he's going to be looking to get around him. Again, you're coming into turn number 2, looks for it, backs out of it very wisely, might I add. And he's going to be stuck right behind that car, which, keep in mind, does have left front damage now from that little door bang. And it's going to be hard for them to be able to manage that as they are right on the tail end of that car.
Yes, and that's going to be potentially reviewed. Remember, in this series, there is race control that can review via race protest from the teams themselves. That could potentially be reviewed upon. We'll give an update on that if that is indeed the case. We've seen a lot of those potential possibilities this season. George Gruber, though, since that contact, he's struggling because that right front is completely crushed in from the contact.
Absolutely, and every little scrap of damage can really hurt these cars, but clearly he still has the draft because he's going to pull right alongside Steve Clays here for Racecraft Esports. They're going to be side by side as they approach him beyond the field. Going to go 3 wide to split them, and they're going to go down into turn 10A, and will there be a contact this time? Still there through turn 10D.
Eric Boudreau goes off into the grass to evade some of the MX-5s that they're reaching the back of. They nearly ran over the back of Wolfgang Woderhauer for Real Pixel Motorsports 299 car in the traffic. That's bundled them up for position as the bump traps get broken up by the MX-5s. Racecraft Esports having to defend 2 lanes of traffic as a huge overrun by Gruber.
And Gruber going to have to back out of that one from Jean-Philippe Gendron. He had to actually let off the throttle to avoid from going off and into the grass. That could have been disastrous for that car if they continued to go into the grass. But here we are, just as we were discussing. They're hitting lap traffic right in the S. It's the worst possible place on the track to hit it. They're going to be all checked up here. This could get very, very messy really, really quickly.
They're all moving towards the left side. Now some of the MX-5s are starting to fan to the left side of the track. That's leading to a dive bomb 3 wide. Torque Freak Racing with their teammates on the outside of the MX-5. They're able to get back to space. Gold Racing Team pinches away the 2 teammates for World of Sim Racing for the class lead. But that's completely broken up the Miata class. It is still up at the front for them, the World of Sim Racing Team machines a little bit, but they're much more separated. That and also in that shuffle, Torque Freak Racing Maggots moved up to 3rd.
I was holding my breath for that whole last lap there because they were just so tight with so many of those Miatas. Jean-Philippe Gendron going on defense into 10A, going to manage to keep Greg Gruber behind him. But he's still going to have that draft coming off in turn 12. Do you think he could potentially make something work with the draft coming into turn 1?
Have to see, this is a little bit of a good spot. You were talking about if you can get a good run off the exit of the last corner, you can make a pass in turn 1. However, it's very dicey this time. Gruber not able to get a run, not able to make a pass as they stay single file in the S's. And we stay clean for now, just past the 10-minute mark, mind you, of this race. We've already seen lap traffic come through once over. You're looking on board for Fisher Motorsport. Emmanuel Mayer on board with his machine. They're looking to try and win an amateur championship for their class.
And that amateur championship, it is something that's going to be discussed as well, because that amateur championship, it's technically a second different championship for a couple of different teams. And one team that might be in second for the overall championship, they could be in the lead for that amateur championship. You have to keep in mind as well. So that is going to be one incident that could be coming back. And speaking of incidents, we got the 271 machine who's just received a stop-and-go penalty for ignoring race control instructions.
It looks like it might be involving the start for their class because there was a start zone we were talking about. That is from the edge of the pit exit wall, entry wall, where there's a safety access road for concrete barriers, all the way up to the start and finish line, just past it really, for the start of the race. Looks like they might have gone earlier, so they are getting a stop and go for ignoring race control instructions. Not good for the class leaders so far for the 271.
Especially since he was running 3rd in the overall championship for your club class, so that is going to be absolutely devastating for that championship. We were just talking about how nobody wanted to have a bad race, and that's the one thing he's going to have to see. Furious flash of the headlights from Steve Clays up front of your Porsche class, though, as he gets bottlenecked behind Greg Gruber.
They've already, again, given that stop and go. They're the only team that got penalized for that said situation. They'll lose a lot of time now as we go up to 6th position because they've been shuffling and dicing around. Remember, this was once a battle for 5th, mind you. But since then, they've gone side by side a couple of times, and Racecraft is starting to fall off a little bit, in part because of those bobbles, in part because of severe left side damage. On top of that, your new class leaders are on your screen for the MX-5s. We're the sim racing team trying to defend Torque Freak Racing Megas.
And Andrew Fawcett has just had a very big incident. Looks like he got loose. He did. He got loose on the curbs of turn 5. Overcorrected, and it looks like potentially contact as well with Glenn Reed for WL Racing being the Radicals. There was contact.
And a second incident now for Hugh Jas Gould. And as you said, lap traffic management. So important. This time, oh man. That was contact, yes, but that wasn't caused by the prototype. It was caused by the rumble strips off of turn 5.
Just like I was talking about earlier, you get up onto those rumble strips and you're going to have a really bad time if you can't get off them quickly. And
whoa, no.
Andrew Fawcett.
Look at that steering wheel, too. Huge snap to the left there on top of that. That looked on top of that hardware failure on that. It was starting to bounce around and then just snapped hard to the left.
Now that is very interesting to say the very least. So yes, a potential hardware failure for Andrew Fawcett, which is, I guess, just as devastating for that car as well, because they've got huge front end damage now. They're going to have a really difficult time ahead of them. Meanwhile, Glenn Reed, the car he made contact with, is going to pull it down into pit lane.
More trouble now because that contact. They did have severe contact to the right side because of that hardware failure. That's definitely unfortunate. Meanwhile, battle for the class lead, battle for position are out there now. Bombshell Motorsports able to make the pass and able to get by Porsche Basel by Sorg Rennsports that time to take the class lead, taking it side by side out of the exit of turn 12.
Kirk Crum going to be able to pull away a little bit here in turn 2 if he can get a good run coming on through. He does have World Sim Racing Team Junior in that Mazda field up in the distance ahead of him, so he's going to have to keep an eye on that. Looks like he's going to be able to hit him, though, right after turn 5, which is, again, like we've said, it's the most preferable place to hit lap traffic is between turns 5 and 10A, because it's probably the only place on the track where you actually get some straight line racing.
And now it's just a matter, I think, of defending the two. Their pace last time by was actually faster by a full second, mind you, than Porsche Basel. Now it's just a matter of trying to keep it ongoing as they pass by the junior team of World of Sim Racing and try and use them as a pick for the time being. They also have Andrew Fawcett up the road with his significant damage here. Just past the 2 hours, 10 minutes to go mark here in this one. We've seen already a lot of intense action. Still 4 contenders in the Proto class. Still many more in the Porsches today. The MX-5's currently broken up a little bit. Torque Freak Racing Megas, however, has taken that class lead. Now away last time by at the stripe.
At Torque Freak Racing Megas, they've been putting the power on down. Gianni Quintelier, he's been looking to get around David Del Rio for some time. Finally managed to make that pass work. But they're still really tight together. Del Rio still has that draft from Quintelier, so Quintelier going to be looking all over his mirrors. They're looking to defend coming into turn 6.
Mind you, these cars are known for being able to draft with one another, especially up close. The tow from behind leads to a lot of lead changes. We see it at tracks, especially like Daytona. And with that run to 10, turn up to 10A, there's going to be a chance to get this pass on back. David Del Rio was passed because of the same that type of run. Not able to get the exit, though, to be able to get in range. We also have a black flag given out, though, to George Gruber. He has just been black flagged for that collision we've seen between him and Racecraft for causing a collision, a stop and go for the 181.
That is very costly for Greg Gruber. It's the one thing he didn't want to see, especially since he already has damage on that car. So that's going to effectively put him out of contention for the championship as well. So Torque Freak Racing Avon Rise, some bad luck for that team early on, especially since they were just fighting for position for 4th place in their class as well.
Should also update that Jeff Tyler has also jumped in the car for Hugh Jas's machine after Andrew Fawcett's hardware errors earlier on for the gold car. He's back on the racetrack. While Torque Freak Racing Avon Ride's able to make the pass, they'll have to make a stop and go and give the position right on back. Not going to do it this time. They have to serve it within 3 laps, or else they end up getting the disqualification flag, the black flag with the white X on it as they let by some of the traffic. So that's the storyline we'll keep up along with today. A lot of the drivers having some clean runs, on some of them now starting to struggle a little bit. The class lead, though, is still up close and personal between Crum and Kirchhoff. They're trying to navigate the MX5 class leaders at the same time.
So 2 fights for the lead coming up on each other at the exact same time. It's probably one of the most terrifying things to see as a driver, manager, or even a play-by-play announcer like us, to see 2 fights for leads in 2 different classes coming up on each other at the same time. It's always probably one of the most unnerving things to see, just because they really don't...
Oh, big trouble on your screen. Look at what's happening on your screen here. SK Motorsports enters trouble with one of the GRT cars.
I'm trying to go back and find out what happened there. It looked like they ran into him coming up into turn 5, and in fact, that is exactly what happened. Replay up on your screens now. So yes, Kyle for SK Motorsports just drove right into the 102 machine. John Gendron trying to get around him going into turn 5 and sent them up right up into the transition road for the short course.
And you mentioned that's the worst possible place to reach traffic, and that was where they reached them and made that contact going to the S's. That was Gold Racing Team White with Jan Philippe Goudron, we've mentioned, being one of the best amateur teams in the class. Now they've got some damage and have to defend for a 10th position as 2 MX5s start door banging as they go up the middle.
And the 2 Porsches are going to just thread the needle, going right through the middle as the 2 MX5s make way. And that is, again, one of those things where it's really unnerving to see this type of racing coming so close together. That is your fight that they just passed through. I believe that was your fight for 5th place in the club class. Meanwhile, though, your fight for the Porsche lead is still picking on up. They're still fighting really hard. Green Kirchhoff still has the draft of Kirk Crum for Bombshell Motorsports.
Right now, they're separated by about 3 or 4 car lengths, heading down into turn 10A once more. And again, you see that little bit of a draft. He's getting a little bit faster by about 4 miles an hour. But Kirchhoff seems to be a little more confident on corner entry, trying to late brake in. However, it's losing him speed on the exit. There is that metaphor, Nolan, that the fastest way to get through the corners is slow in, then fast off, rather than fast in and slow off.
I found that not to just be a metaphor, but actually some very good advice, because it's something that I've actually applied to so many of my own races, and it definitely works to go in, slow in, fast out. It's definitely a lot more effective. Corners where this could be applied, especially, it would be the final corner at Laguna Seca. It's a perfect turn to really be able to emphasize that philosophy in. And there's so many corners here where it can be the exact same way. You go in, slow in, fast out, and you'll just be able to get such a much faster run down the track.
And a chance for another run here on top of this now, too, as you see them still lined up as they head off into turn 6 and 7. You can tell right now that Kirchhoff wants to get this lead back, in part because look what's coming behind. He's got Tor Anders Bervin that's, while he's losing time, could gain some time if they reach the lap traffic of that prototype of Kevin Enderman that's currently sandwiched between them down the straight at the wrong time. You can see that he's currently still in a decent spot. Kirchhoff, meanwhile, though, he's taking a look into turn 10A for the race lead. Trying to take the class lead away side by side. This was how Bombshell got it done. Bombshell, though, much more stronger off of turn 11.
Just barely managing to hang on for Kirk Crum, as they're going to have to make way, though, for Kevin Enderman coming right behind. A little bit of a wiggle from the back end of that Radical as he comes on through. Going to have to back out of it, though, coming into turn number 1. So that Radical going to have a little bit of work ahead of him if he's going to try to get through these guys coming up down the hill.
And speaking of drivers trying to come down the hill, Torque Freak Racing Yvonne Rice spun out before they can get down the hill. Remember that suspension damage for Gruber? Still having to serve a penalty. Ended up looping it around in a full circle.
That happened right on the exit of turn 7 as well, so might have just gotten the power down a little early as well. And that is, it's the one thing that they weren't looking to see on your screen. Now, replay of the passing of the overtake attempt from Kirchhoff going on Kirk Crum, just not able to make that work. Crum very, very strong on the exit of turn 11.
How difficult is it to try and make a pass like that on the outside line? Bombshell got it done before to get out of turn 11 and 12 to take the class lead. How do you do it if you're Kirchhoff?
You got to really wait. You really need to be right on the back bumper and still be coming up on him with speed before you can really make it work, especially coming through turns 10A and B, just because of how unique they can be in the sense that you really need to be able to get through them. He really needs to punch his way through in turn 10A if he's going to have any hope of going for turn 10B. And one car is going off. It's old Christian Uneberg for Team Viking Sleipner, taking a little bit of a scary moment through the grass at the exit of turn 3, going into the grass and trying to hang on to it through the SS.
Let's take a look at that. They were trying to keep up with IVRA Vervatic, who was starting to pull away as they just shoot hard to the right that time. These cars are very easy to weight shift. We've seen IVRA Vervatic actually do it in qualifying. That time, it looks like that was in part because the weight shift going from right side tires to left.
It was indeed. The weight shift on those cars can just be so incredibly severe. It's very easy to be caught off guard, especially when you're coming over the crest of a hill just like they were. The car just feels like it's being lifted up the ground, which it almost is, because the air will start to kind of pick up under the car and start to just tip it up, and that gives you so little grip, and I think that's what happened for that car when it slid off into the grass.
Looking at the class lead now for the MX-5s. Road Sim Racing team reeling back in. Quintelier for Torque Freak Racing Maggots. And right now still separated by just a car length. It's very close. It looks like that David Del Rio, who was working with his teammate, mind you, is fairly quick. He's just trying to time it up right. He was in the 137 flats last time. Torque Freak Racing Maggots 137.129 with a major snap.
And Del Rio's being very, very patient here. He's waiting for the exact perfect opportune moment. He knows that if he makes it too early, it could put both cars into the wall and end both of their runs for the title. So he's going to make sure to try to be as patient as he can here. Might try to go for a look at turn 6. I wouldn't expect him to, though. He's going to stay right in line through turn 6.
That's exactly what he's doing. He's trying a different line, however. It looks like he's trying to late brake a little bit more in, stay away from the rumble strips, take a wider apex, and try and take a tighter exit off. And that in turn, though, Torque Freak Racing Maggots was a bit stronger once more through 6 and 7 that time. However, they have the draft disadvantage, as well as the disadvantage of Lucas Dolzer with the overall race lead, mind you, passing on by. By the way, he's leading by 10 seconds.
And here comes Jeff Tyler coming up behind him as well for your Porsche field. He's going to breeze on through right as they enter the braking zone. Will Del Rio make a look? No, he will not. So Del Rio going to continue to just wait this out. He's waiting for this to play out because he recognizes if he tries to go for it when he's in traffic like this, it could be very, very costly.
You know what else would be very costly and something we talk about a lot? It's the fuel saving. A lot of teams, if you don't tuck in behind someone, you can end up being off strategy on fuel by 1 or 2 laps. Maybe that's what the thought process is here. He was doing the same with his junior counterpart, mind you, before his junior counterpart got flagged for this race. At this point, I think he's actually content of following on behind as long as he stays in range.
Well, he's got just under 2 hours now to make a move, so he's got plenty of time to make it work. No need to make that move early on, because he does that, then he could put himself off a strategy on fuel, just like you were saying. So the fuel savings could very well be the
yes, I think that's 100% what he's thinking about here. Exactly 100%.
Thank you so much for that, Justin. He's definitely going to be thinking about what he can do here for the fuel saving. He's going to be trying to consider every angle, I think, is what these drivers are trying to consider. There we go. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah. They're trying to work their way through what different strategies they could work out throughout the race to see if they could get the most out of their tanks.
And Gruber has worked his way out of the pits just now and served a stop-and-go penalty. 27 seconds in the lane. Just under 5 seconds inside the stall for the stop-and-go penalty. He drops to 14th in the class for today's race. That is going to be hard to recover for. Back to the class lead, though, for the sport drivers. Again, Crum, Kirchhoff still grouped up. Look who's closed in, though, because of some of the time lost really by both of them. Bervin has been able to reel in the top 2 because of the traffic, and you see some of the traffic going in the grass.
Indeed, this is going to be very tight here, going 3 wide for a split second, and Kirchhoff has to run really wide to allow SK Motorsports through. SK Motorsports going to be held up behind Kirk Crum here, coming down through turn 2 and all the way down the hill.
And you know who this is helping more? Crum, because he got separated by a couple car lanes. Kirchhoff's trying to gas his way through to catch up. also that's been shuffling around as this has been going on. These MX-5s you're looking at right now, 4th and 5th, that are just working to the S's behind that battle. They've gone back and forth for this position all race so far.
They really have it. It shows how evenly matched both of those drivers are, and it's providing some astonishing racing from both of these drivers. Matthew Smith trying to chase down Simon Esches, driving for GT Temple Racing. Still has that draft. We've talked about how these Miatas are known for having a very strong draft, especially when you're on long straights. Daytona was a perfect example of that. And this run from turn... Ooh, and Esches getting a little loose coming off the corner, almost losing the back end.
That's for GT Temple Racing for Esches, as he's able to save it on. We do have an hour penalties, though. It's the number 27 machine, and that would be SK Motorsports involved in that contact we've seen before. That was with one of the Gold Racing Team machines. He has just been given a stop and go for causing a collision. He will have to come in and serve the penalty as well. There was apparently an appeal from George Gruber for his penalty. He has also gotten a black flag back after serving a stop and go.
As that appeal was not successful, unfortunately, for Greg Gruber, but I am going to say, for SK Motorsports, I was honestly a little surprised that Race Control didn't penalize that sooner, because I feel like it's something that we all expected to see when that contact was made, and we're going to look back now to your fight for the Mazda lead, which has begun to close right on in again.
In terms of appealing penalties, this is the first time we've seen this all season, actually, if I can remember correctly, with the appealing penalties. Any team that receives an in-race penalty can appeal the penalty. The only normal in-race penalty that cannot be appealed is abusing the track limits. All in-race appeals will be done via the Discord server that the series has, and/or directly to Race Control. If they choose not to appeal the penalty, they would like to serve the penalty immediately, they tell Race Control immediately. Then the penalty is to be served. It appears that they've served the penalty, then have the appeal, then he came down to serve said penalty. As we have multiple class battles on your screen going on with both the Porsches and the MX-5s, they try and keep the races clean for the time being as multiple classes of traffic break on through.
And we're having a fight for third place as well in your sport class. Manuel Meyer tried to make a move on Steve Clays coming down in the run to turn 10. Almost had to back out for turn 10. Steve Clays for Racecraft Esports managed to get him back in that little chicane. Now down through turn 12, Meyer's going to run a little wide. That will allow Frank van Brandwyk to close on in.
And you have to say for Racecraft for Claces, he's, despite that damage, what looks to be possible suspension damage, mind you, he's been able to defend very well for this top 5 position with both the points leader in NAB Racing and Fisher Motorsport, 2 very quick cars this season, right up his gearbox.
And 2 very quick cars that are right in behind him. He's going to have to keep an eye on things as well for Steve Clays. He's got a lot to worry about here. Manuel Meyer looking to the outside going to turn 6. Can he pull that off? Well, I think we both know the answer was going to be no for that one. Meyer's going to still be right in behind him, though, as he comes off of turn 7. He's going to be trying to make something work coming down here into turn 10 once again.
If you're the drivers behind, if you're Fisher Motorsport, who gained 4/10 last time, or NAB Racing, who is nearly a full second quicker, how patient can you afford to be knowing that Claces has damage? That's going to be answered right now, pardon me, because guess who's making the move? It's going to be Mayer to the inside line, trying to work his way on the outside line now, able to get the run. NAB Racing also going to try and get it done through 11 and 12.
And NAB Racing going to have to back out through 11 and 12, but that was a textbook overtake from Manuel Meyer in turns 10 and 11. Pulled that outside line perfectly on the exit to pick up third. I believe that was third place in class that they were fighting for.
Have a quick update involving that 137 machine. Remember the hardware failure for Fawcett? He has already apologized to the team directly. He did confirm the hardware failure, that his wheel apparently disconnected from his computer. That caused the wreck that we've seen before off the rumble strips on the exit of turn number 5. Again, that would be the car Jeff Tyler is currently running. We stick with this battle for the position, though, as potentially losing 6th position could be Racecraft Esports as they try and defend the overall points leaders for the class in Frank van Brandwyk and NAB Racing.
Jean-Philippe Gendron, he's looking in the wings as well, looking to pick up another spot, because all this fighting that these guys are doing up here, it is beginning to slowly back them off into traffic behind. So Jean-Philippe Gendron for Gold Racing Team White, he's going to be looking to make something work as well, as Brandwick looks to close the gap on NAB Racing. Sorry, on Racecraft Esports.
Now Racecraft able to defend once more, but what do you do now if you're Claces, knowing your car's a little bit damaged and you're starting to fall off the pace you were showing a little bit earlier on, and knowing that some of the fastest drivers are behind you? What do you do as a driver knowing you have the fastest cars behind you coming up with your damage you have to struggle through?
If you're fighting for position, I would say try to just defend with every fiber of your moral being. What I would say, because it really shows how vigilant you are and wanting to keep your positions, especially if you have damage and you're fighting for position. He definitely has been doing very, very well on defense so far. We saw how well he kept Manuel Meyer behind him for so long. And unfortunately, Meyer just able to breeze on through in turn 10 after that. Again, textbook overtake. But Clace, he's had a little bit of loose moments. He had a little bit more of a tank slapper coming over the rumble strips for turn 5. So these little mistakes, they are beginning to back him off into traffic. And he's not going to be able to hang on for much longer at this rate.
Yeah, he is struggling on the right hand. Turns again, Claces checks them all up. Able to still save it though. Yeah, that left front is definitely causing issues on the right-hand turns now, to the point where he's about to get drafted along by both the GRT machine and NAB Racing. They're going to try and make it NAB Racing on the right side. GRT's going to try it on the left side, kneeling to the grass. 3 wide heading into turn 10. Gold Racing Team backs off smartly, but Van Brandwick trying to still get on by. Nearly shoves into the door. Still can't get on by quite yet. Wow.
And to say it again, Steve Clace, he's showing how good he is on defense, and that is a perfect picture of it right there. He made sure to keep that door open just a crack to try to get Jean-Philippe Gendron in, and Gendron had to back out of it right as Clace shut the door. So that, and then he managed to pull that outside line on turn 11 to work his way around Frank Van Brandwick, who was on the inside of that corner, but he's going to get loose, and Brandwick going to make a move here coming down through the S's. He's going to have to once again back out of it coming up to turn 5.
Let's see if he gets the right run. Yes, he can. Off the rumble strips, and Claces goes loose. You make it 2 wide as lap traffic comes on through, and Lucas Dolzer, as he'll drop back to P7. He'll also potentially lose an air spot because Eric Boudreau is also joining this battle to try and make the move now to take away another position. Class lead also being taken away in turn 10. It's Porsche Bezo up to the race lead once more.
Porsche Bezo is going to go to the lead. Kirchhoff finally managed to get it done. Goes into the grass a little bit on the exit of turn 11 coming into turn 12. They're going to be really tight coming in through here. Kirchhoff had to check up, so Kirk Crum now able to close right on in. And there is Tor Anders Bourbon, who's right on the back end of these drivers now. He's managed to close his way in. So third place in class beginning to pick up as well. And here comes SK Motorsports trying to work their way through.
SK Motorsports currently 4th in the class, a minute plus off the pace due to their penalty. A lot of drivers still checked up in this section. On top of that, it seems like that Bourbon's gaining a lot of time, especially off the exit of turn 10A and 10B. The problem is, every time that Team Vikings machine seems to gain the time, they reach traffic right at that front stretch, and he's forced to either go into the grass nearly or check up.
It is, and it's just one of those very unfortunate things where, you know, you really have to try to pick your moments carefully. And Bourbon, he's going to have some work ahead of him. He's going to be able to get through these guys. He does have a little bit of a gap now because he's only got Miatas and then Porsches behind him, so no radicals as far as the eye can see. So Bourbon's going to have a lot of room to be able to work his way through if he can use these cars coming out as a pick.
Those cars, again, are the leaders for the club class. As Crum able to late break in to gain time. Losing time will be Bourbon as he reaches Quinn Tower side by side as Quinn Tower saves it. He nearly lost it side by side on the bottom of the racetrack, and that means David Del Rio had a chance to take the lead. He decides to still save fuel and give him the racing respect in Racecraft to let him save it and keep the spot.
Del Rio, again, going to be looking to save fuel. It looks like that's definitely going to be the strategy for him, but going to turn eyes. Oh, never mind. We're going to keep an eye on this fight for the leader because it looks like, oh, this is a replay of what we just saw, trying to go for the lead and not able to really make it work.
That was a good save first off, but second, good sportsmanship a little bit, knowing that I think in part the circumstances, that was not the best of ways I think you want to take a lead for the class, knowing too you're in fuel saving mode. Why push the issue? Why not make an issue get much more worse like that, where you could have just tried to make a passing situation and take advantage of a mistake, knowing you would probably let him on by anyway.
I completely agree with you there. I mean, he still has an hour and 48 minutes left to get it done in this race. That's more than enough time for that car to be able to get around him. And he clearly has the pace to get through him. He's clearly saving fuel, and that is going to be his strategy for the whole race, it seems.
Exactly. And even with that, that actually helped him a little bit more, or a slight bit, still keeps him with them, because he was actually pulling away slight touch with the traffic, but now it's about keeping the cars clean. The top 30 in the class have been able to pull on away once again for the Porsches now that they've gotten some breathing room. And again, SimRC DE Strawberry has been the car to beat today once more. 15 seconds ahead of the rest of the field and setting the fastest lap times each time in their class by up to a tenth each time. Fastest lap was 1.2 seconds quicker than anybody else in the field, making a full second, mind you.
Yeah, let me tell you, that SimRC.de Strawberry, Gene, it is truly something else. Just of how much speed has been pointed down. Daytona was a perfect example where that car was so off the pace for the first portion of the race and managed to somehow not only overtake the whole field, but pull, I believe it was close to a 1 minute gap by the end of the race from Patrick Young. So that SimRC.de Strawberry, they have got some very talented drivers behind the wheel. Looking back to your Mazda field now for that battle for the lead. And again, David Del Rio staying right on in behind to let these cars through.
Yeah, that will be that battle for 11th, 12th, and 13th overall, along with Sork Racing Orange cutting on through. Everyone's staying single file. Del Rio nearly running over the back end that time on Quinn Tower, as they end up all getting through cleanly. Still holding on, though, in that said battle was Clayce's, as she's seen in front of Sport News for the time being. Also, Quinn Tower seen Del Rio currently check up a little bit down the straight to still save the fuel, because the way you can save fuel in these things is sometimes you can bump track, sometimes you can get out of the gas, or sometimes you can say, we've hit our fuel mark, we're going to make the pass right now. That's what Del Rio is saying. He's making it side by side and quickly gets on by.
David Del Rio completing that pass right in the braking zone for turn 10, and nothing that Quintelli was able to do about that one. Has to let him on through. He's going to be trying to use that draft to close right on in, but will Quintelli be able to keep the draft, and more importantly, will he be able to not only work his way up, but overtake David Del Rio with the fuel saving that he's been doing? Because Del Rio, he's going to have a lot more fuel in his tank right now than his opponent here will.
Yeah, he saved a lot of fuel that time, tucked in behind for what was about nearly 15 laps technically. He's been behind a car the whole race because he worked with the World of Sim Racing Team Junior car before their penalty, as once again to mention. Then, of course, after that, let Torque Freak Racing Maggots be the lead car, and now it looks like because he reached that fuel mark, being able to save so much, he's now able to just go all out until his pit window opens up. Also trying to go all out once again, Bombshell Motorsports trying to get the class lead back for the sport drivers. Technically a lap down to the prototypes, but of course, been the leaders of the class so far. Bervin's had a chance a couple times, but he's been the one getting the worst luck of traffic. These two drivers have been able to manage the traffic the quickest so far today.
Kirchhoff, as you saw, coming off of turn 12, had a little bit of a moment going through the grass at the exit of the corner. That's probably one of the worst places you want to hit the grass, is on the exit of turn 12, because if you get loose there, you're almost certainly going to be hitting a wall somewhere, and it will never be pretty when you do. And Kirchhoff going to be hanging on to turn 5 as well. Kurt Crum going to be really looking to be able to put the power down and get on through. Tor Anders Bervin, he's still looking to make a move in the back as well.
They're both matching the same line somewhat. Again, Kirchhoff again taking a wider exit now and a wider apex, much more tighter for Crum against the curbs. And Bervin again getting held up in the backdrop, getting squirrely, in fact, nearly running to the back of Budenauer for Real Pixel Motorsport. They still stay 1-2 up in the front between Porsche Basel and Bombshell. Bombshell's going for it, though. They got the draft once more for position. They end up late breaking their way in. Can Crum hold off the position? Yes, he can, as he's able to take the class lead for the second time today.
And Kirchhoff let off a little bit early, recognized that he still got a lot of time in this race, so he let Crum go right on through. And again, this will allow Kirchhoff to be able to save a little bit of fuel as well through that draft as well. So Kirchhoff, no doubt, going to be taking advantage of the new fuel-saving opportunity that Crum has just presented him.
Yes, indeed, especially since we just about passed, just indeed passed the 30-minute mark. The fuel estimated window with the fuel limits is to get the fuel window to around 45 minutes to about up to an hour, give or take. At some of the tracks we've seen this season, right now they're currently about halfway through the fuel stints in theory for that before they bring in their next drivers for today's race. As they move on by a very slow German sim racing orange car that looks like it's got a problem.
Yeah, I was about to mention that German sim racing car definitely is very much off the pace, and I don't know what happened to that car. It doesn't have any damage on it from what I can see, so maybe is Kunak Constable potentially taking it easy here, or is there a different story behind that car?
Well, in part, in qualifying, they were a full 2 seconds nearly off the pace to the full time, first off. But second, they've also got some damage. They've been running basically in the 124s, 125s all day and been struggling on corner exits so far with Henrik Constable behind the wheel. Back to the class lead, though, we go to the MX-5s. They're still 1-2 up in the front. But one thing you have to discuss, of course, when it comes to being able to draft with each other, if you can break the toe of your fellow competitors, you can actually go faster. In fact, that's what they've been doing, able to break the toe from every other battle on the racetrack. The nearest competitors for them still a ways back, at the very least, a few turns back, still to the S's is third on back.
And that's just shown how good these drivers have been able to manage their draft and manage the traffic. And that is in part to David Del Rio for spending so much time behind Quintellier to save fuel. They have not been holding each other up, trying to fight for position. As 3 wide they go. Jeff Tyler for Hugh Jaskold trying to get around Hohen, who's right ahead of him. But of course, Tyler is a lap down from Hohen, so that is going to be a bit of a futile overtake for them. But Quintellier, he's been having that drafting help from Del Rio, and I think that's why they've been able to break such a gap, because they haven't been slowing each other down as much as some of the other guys have.
Exactly, and a lot of the guys, a lot of the packs rather, have been broken up because the traffic, for one, because of where they've been reaching them, but for two, it's just, again, when you have this kind of ability to draft, especially less cars, the more drivers you have to worry about, the less arrow pushing, in theory, too, you have to worry about. And this time, Quintellier is still getting a better run this time off the corner exit, and now I think he's trying to save fuel, knowing he burned a lot in that first half of the stint. He's doing what Del Rio was doing for the past 30 minutes. He's saving.
And look out in your mirrors, because here comes your fight for the Porsche lead, which is tightened back up, and they're hitting your fight for the Mazda lead now, right in the middle of the SS. That's going to back Crum off into Kirchhoff. Will Kirchhoff try to make a look here coming off of turn number 5? He's going to be able to get a much better run here than Kurt Crum will.
And Crum still was able to gain some time because Kirchhoff had to shoot hard left to get around the MX-5s. And that time, Bervin also able to get by cleanly. Quintellier actually tried to use the draft of Team Vikings to save some fuel that time to be slightly interesting. Everyone holds on to positions. Everyone's still spaced out. No one close to making a pass quite yet, as they're separating out by 5 car lengths each between the 3 of them.
And that is, of course, going to be thanks to your fight for the Mazda lead in the back. They got so split up, but with time, they will begin to close right on in. In fact, Kirchhoff already beginning to close in to Kurt Crum in that Bombshell Motorsports car. They're going to come down through turns 11 and 12 and just barely clip the rumble strips on the inside, and up to the outside they go.
In terms of Bombshell Motorsports, they didn't gain any points in the last round from Zolder. They only came in with 128 points. The most they gained was a second at Daytona. Compare that to the Porsche machine you're on board with. They competed in 2 of the rounds for points, 66, 47 respectively from Daytona and Silverstone. They have a chance to come away with a top 10 points finish, potentially to jump across Slow Racing Team, who is not in today's race. They're trying to hold on for the time being. Team Vikings Valhalla, however, they're in the position I think they need to at least move up a potential spot in the overall standings in that 3rd position behind these guys. if they finished off the race right now, they would jump Gold Racing Team White for second, but I don't know if there'd be enough white yet for NAB Racing.
And something we are going to have to discuss as well as we get further into this race is how will fights for the championship points play out as well, because these guys, when they're fighting for their championship leads, it's going to be very tense on a lot of these drivers. So we have to consider, where do drivers need to be in comparison to their opponents in order to be able to take, in order for there to be really swap for your championship points as well.
Yeah, exactly, and right now, for comparison's sake, for NAB Racing, they're back to 10th overall on the track right now. That is 6th in the class, and trying to hold on and try and gain spots. In fact, on Fisher Motorsport, they were part of that group that was trying to get by what we've seen a little while ago. But for the time being, the class lead overall is still very tight, with Kirk Crum still defending, Kirchhoff still defending meanwhile, along with Lucas Dolzer also still going on through. Alex Coffer, though, coming on in now for Hugh Jass's blue car.
And it looks like that pit window is beginning to open on up as Alex Coffer comes in for what appears to be a scheduled pit stop, because he's going to be spending more than 5 seconds in that pit box this time, unlike some of the other drivers that have received stop-and-go penalties throughout this race. Already trying to hit that rev limiter in first gear, trying to get going again. He's clearly anxious, and he's going to be able to get going in just a few moments here.
And off and away he goes. Looks like just fuel. If I looked at that right on the yes indeed, just the fuel being put into the car now for the 138. The first driver to have a scheduled pit stop today. If he's pitting now, what does that tell you for their potential strategy? Mind you, they must have a driver swap in this one.
Well, they might not be making their driver swap just yet, but they do have another stop that they can make it on. There is no rule that says when you have to make it. And speaking of strategy, here comes your entire fight for first, second, and third in your Porsche class. They're all coming into the pit lane in sequence.
It looks like all of them are coming in with these. A lot of the drivers coming in a lap earlier you just seen. Let's see how they decide to go about this right now in this strategy. Again, Kirk Crum was able to enter the pit lane first, it appears. Kirchhoff second, Burfin third, as they all stop in their boxes, all lined up 1, 2, 3. We'll see if anyone decides to go for a driver swap in this one. It looks like Eric Mix coming in for Bombshell. Everyone else, right now, everyone else looks like they will stay in their cars at least for now.
So Eric Mick going to jump in for Bombshell Motorsports in their 186 machine. Ring Kirchhoff, he's going to stay in so far for that 168 machine. He's going to go off and away, and Mick is going to lose out on quite a few spots here as a result of that driver swap, because it does take a few extra seconds to make that driver swap, and it may well have just cost them several positions. But at the same time, you have to keep in mind, those other drivers up front, they still have to make a driver swap as well.
And all of them are double stinting the tires, it appears here based on this. Maybe not Bombshell, actually, because Bombshell, of course, with that driver swap, taking tires. So the drivers who didn't do a swap, double stinting the tires in this one. Let's talk about the double stint strategy here compared to taking tires here, because yes, it gains you a lot of time. It's sometimes up to 15-20 seconds in pit difference, depending on the class. But there's also the chance of the class time falling the other direction, though.
That is true. These drivers have to keep in mind that if you go for a double stint, yes, you will save the time, like you said, but all the other drivers behind you, they can close it really quickly because they're going to be on fresh tires, and you're going to have to do a little bit more conserving. Here's your fight for the Porsche lead now. That's still holding on strong as they exited the pits.
They actually got broken up a little bit because they reached that MX-5 lead battle. Behind them, though, Torque Freak Racing Maggots just dive-bombed their way back to the class lead to get on by David Del Rio. Del Rio, though, trying to find a way to the outside line before they have to duck down the pit. Slowly approaching 90 minutes to go in the race as Del Rio wants that spot back potentially as they cross the line.
Del Rio going to really be looking to make something work here for himself. We've seen the aggression between this fight beginning to pick up just a little bit. That dive bomb from Quintelier, it could be a sign that maybe even he could be coming down to pit soon and wants to be in the lead when he does. So he has that little extra gap when he comes down to the pits as well.
Some of the MX-5s are coming in on top of that. Matthew Smith among the drivers for Gold Racing Team, World of Sim Racing Team Juniors. Danny Forte Piedra coming into the pits as well. So that means that window is officially open for all the drivers. In this one, Team Viking Sleipner also been running on their own after losing their drafting partner coming into the pits. Let's head up to that class lead, mind you, to see how they shape things out and who decides to come on down, because 19th and 20th overall are still bumper to bumper, one car length back. And reminder, the junior car, of course, teammates with the senior car that's in second.
And David Del Rio, could he potentially look for a move coming into turn 10A? This is going to be the big question. Doesn't look like he's nearly close enough to make anything work. Here comes Manuel Meyer from Fisher Motorsport up behind him. He's going to breeze on by. And Del Rio not going to be nearly close enough to make a move here on Quintelli unless he goes for a really huge dive bomb, but he's not going to go for it. Now the question is, will Quintelli come down the road? Because if Quintelli comes down, it's almost certain that Del Rio will be following him. And it looks like it's going to be the other way around.
No, it's Del Rio coming down, following the same strategy potentially of his teammate. Difference of about 1 lap between their stops, however, because of the black flagging part. So they have come into pit. Quintelli left on his own with no one to work with on the racetrack and traffic to navigate. One thing to note as well, Nab Racing up to 4th in their class after having the longest stretch in the pits today.
That is going to be one of the key things. We do have, like I said, we have that car that just went up into 4th place. It looks like Del Rio is going to be hopping out of the car, and Borja Garcia going to be hopping on in. So a driver change early on for your MX-5 field. And are they potentially going for an undercut, do you think, on Quintelli, who's still out on track?
I think that's potentially the possibility. It is somewhat of a risk, yes and no, but they can potentially gain a lot of time with this depending on how they play this. Compare that to the driver still on the track, of course, in Torque Freak Racing, and they're sitting on the lonesome, letting by tons of traffic, still about a quarter of a track away from the pits, and they might have to come down this time with a majority of the MX-5s already ducking down.
That is true. They might have to make that move down to pit road, and if there's ever a time to take the risk, it would be now. So it looks like World of Sim Racing Team, they are going to be taking that extra risk, because we got one car was going around. It is Nils V. Payne for German Sim Racing Friends that just almost went for a spin in turn 10A. Lost the back end as he tried to come out towards turn 11.
He is still going. He is 11th on the racetrack. And that was after he looks like it might have locked up the right side tires, lets on by the lead lap traffic. And Baudrois for Sim Sport News Racing, powered by iZone Green once more. Track stays clear for the time being. Also, as that goes on, Torque Freak Racing Megas into the pits they go for their scheduled pit stop in this one. 1 lap later, Philip Roberts is amongst the drivers that could jump into the car today for that team. Quintelli Curley still sitting in the cockpit as they get the tire.
This could be interesting because Quintelli is staying in that car. However, remember that second place car where they were fighting? They have a new driver in that car now for World of Sim Racing Team. They do have a new driver, so they've lost a fair bit of time as a result. And if they did lose a fair bit of time on that pit stop by changing that driver, do you think they probably made the wrong call and might have just actually cost themselves some serious ground on the track?
I think that point is very mute because they just went off and rolling at the exact same pit stop time as Garcia. Should note here, Nolan, that with different classes, yes, you can lose some time, sometimes up to 15 seconds. The MX-5s, not a part of that grouping today as they took their tires, got their driver swap, just a tenth slower, just 1/10 slower than Garcia. As that's been going on, Nab Racing lost 4th position, as you've seen at the edge of your screen just a few moments ago. Martin June still staying behind the wheel. They were the longest driver car to stay out for their class before they came down for fuel.
And we have had one car that just pulled on off. It was Matthew Smith for Gold Racing Team. Just pulled off, coming off turn 1, off of the pit exit. Actually, just came out of the
and
pits.
We got trouble. Patrick Young. Yes, indeed. Let's take a look at that second one to look at. Patrick Young nearly getting some damage as he went off. Here's the issue with Matthew Smith. As he went off into the grass, he had been in the pits for a fairly long time. As he went on in, could this be a potential secondary issue? We'll have to find out. Second one, Patrick Young. This was from lap traffic management, trying to get around Dirk Fetterman and one of the Hugh Jazz cars.
And another incident as well. George Gruber has just spun, locked the brakes up coming into turn 2. Looks like it might have been a technical fault because that car locked the brakes up and there is something wrong because he was sitting on the track for a very long time, managed to back the car up, and he was sitting there for a very long time before he managed to get himself going again.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of stuff is happening all at the same time all of a sudden. Here's what happened with Torque Freak Racing on your screen. And right there. So what is going on here?
Looks like there is a lot of different issues that seem to be happening all at the same time. So we had a little bit of a lull in the incidents, and then, well, they just came right and picked it on up again, as everything seems to be kicking off at once. And then you can see he sat on the track for a very long time before he got going, and doesn't seem to have any issues now. So what do you think happened there?
It looked like a lockup, yes, on there, but we also got a secondary update in terms that the reason why you see Matthew Smith go off, he had been running on his lonesome 22nd after his long pit stop. Remember one of the drivers that were up at the front to Porsche Basel, RacespotTV, RacespotTV Esports? They're the ones who ended up flipping them upside down before they went off in the grass. That sent the 168 into the sand. Smith was on his roof. It slid on upside down before bringing it back to the garage area. That also just happening just about 15-20 seconds ago minimum, maybe about a couple minutes rather. That involved, again, the 168 that lost them a spot to Fisher.
So a very big incident, it seems. So lots of different things are beginning to kick off all at the same time for a lot of different drivers. So it could get very interesting. Is Kirchhoff going to continue to try to close in the gap to Tor Anders Berven?
Yeah, a lot of things happening at the same time. A lot of confusion here and there here. Again, that incident just happening on the end and the first part of lap 41 through the S's. Pardon me, let me go back just one more little step here to double check this again with this. This was, again, they were on their own in part because of the damage. They were reaching some of the traffic just a few laps ago before the issue with Gold Racing Team. For Gold Racing Team, for them, it was after they came out of the pits on their lap 33. Again, for Gold Racing Team's lap 33, that's why you see some of the damage.
So that is going to be very interesting. We'll try to get a look at that if we can. That will only be if it's possible as well. And it looks like Kirchhoff going to be able to make a move down the pit road as well.
Yeah, we're continuing to try and double check that incident here. You see some of the traffic that's being navigated as the lead class leads were going on. This should be nearly about it right here. They were up towards the front with the S's. They came down the pit lane. Then, after the pit lane, if we can speed up ahead, it was just as they came out, I believe, out to the S's when that contact happened. This was after a lengthy pit stop for Gold Racing Team that this happened. You've seen them up on the jacks, able to get their fresh tires. Then shortly after the pit stop, they ended up getting flipped up and over through the S's again. We'll get that replay as soon as we can once again in this one. Here is that right here. And this should be about. They were just coming out of the pits. Lap traffic should be coming in the backdrop in the next couple moments. You should see the flipping car right about in the next moment.
And here comes Kirchhoff, who came on through, approaches the back end of Gold Racing Team. Where did this happen? It looked like it would have been in the S's coming up to turn 5. That was where the contact was made, and yeah, just tipped him right up and over and slid on his roof through the sand.
Black flag was given to the team as well for the contact to the S's on that said lap for a stop and go. Gold Racing Team is back going. Let's take a second look.
Probably just the last thing they wanted to see, and that Porsche really just tipped them up and over. I don't think there was a whole lot that Gold Sim Racing Team really did wrong there. It is more so on the lap car to try to work their way through the lap traffic safely, and it is just a very unfortunate incident for that 243 machine.
Apologies for the confusions for the fans at home, but a major incident there. On the bright side, their white car is on the move. It's now trying to gain up to Porsche Basel, RacespotTV, RacespotTV Esports after their incident. And they're closing up fairly quickly a little bit. They only have one lap in a car of Jeff Tyler between the two of them. And last time by, because of the said incident, they were able to gain nearly 20 seconds.
And 20 seconds, it's a lot of time and track position as well. 20 seconds, like, any racing fan knows that 20 seconds on any racetrack, it could very well be a lifetime. So the fact that you managed to gain that much, it is just absolutely phenomenal for NAB Racing, as they are right on the tail end of Jean-Philippe Gendron. Martin June going to be looking to get around him here, coming down at the turn 10.
Yeah, NAB Racing team is starting to try and go on the prowl. They started again towards the back. They qualified 11th overall, outside the top 10 of the class, recorded one of the slower times in the top 10 at 1:21.7 qualifying. Since then, though, the race pace has been in the 1:23s. It's been some of the fastest times in the entire class. In fact, same pace as second place as Fisher Motorsport. As this has all happened, mind you, Team Vikings is in the lead now by nearly 14 seconds.
And I think that is because when they came in, they did not take a driver change. So Tor Anders Bervin still running out front of that 1-1-1 machine. So they are looking to run away with the lead here potentially. Do you think they could be going for a double stint as well?
Trouble in front. Trouble in front of the cars we were just looking at. Again, it's Jeff Tyler. Jeff Tyler spun around right in front of that battle we were just looking at, because there was contact again from traffic. This time, SK Motorsport.
And Carter Kundinger was trying to go for an overtake, and a huge-ass goal. Tyler just cut right across Kundinger's path, and clearly Carter not expecting for that to happen. So that is just, it's a little unfortunate as well for Kundinger, because he's got big damage in front of his car now, and he clearly was not expecting for Jeff Tyler to cut down across him like that.
So the intensity level in the span of about 10-15 minutes has gone from maybe about a 1 or 2 to now about 11 or 12 all of a sudden, because everyone seems to be getting a little bit more aggressive with some of the battles. Look at the battle going on for 11, German Sim Racing Friends. They're trying to defend Racecraft Esports. We are hearing Racecraft is a bit down on speed from the contact as they make so. And another incident involving German Sim Racing Friends. They've not had that many friends today, it seems, unfortunately.
And very unfortunate not having any favors done today as well. So that is probably the one thing that they weren't looking to see was their it looked like there may very well have been contact in that crash as well, as you have the replay up on your screens. Yeah,
it was after the spin coming from behind from the back of Racecraft, who was unable to avoid the path of the loose pane. And now we're back to live action. NAB Racing nearly dicing and weaving. We do have a penalty on the racetrack. It is Bombshell. And the 186, remember they had a driver swap. Eric Mick had an unsafe rejoin. He is forced to have a stop and go penalty, as NAB nearly has to stop and go behind the back of Baber Vervatic.
And Eric Mick onto the lane right now, already off and away. So Eric Mick serving his stop and go almost right away. He's going to be off and away now. Going to really have to watch for that yellow line as he rejoins the track. Going to manage to get a safe rejoin this time. And Eric Mick is going to be back on track now. And he's going to look to get the power down to make up for lost time. Yeah, he's lost even more time and could potentially take him out of that battle for the class lead. So that has turned from bad to worse for them. They are now 8th on the racetrack. That's a bright spot. They're still front of the battle of Torque Creek Racing, Yvonne Rise, Racecraft amongst that group of drivers that have had some bumping and banging today. Also some bumping and banging, GT Temple Racing. Ava Vervatic and Dirk Finnerman had to go in the grass to pass them a couple laps ago. Now they're going to have to defend World of Sim Racing Team Junior. That's recovered a lot of time lost since their penalty at the start of the race. And we're watching now as your battle for 4th place in your Mazda field between GT Temple Racing and World of Sim Racing Team Junior. We saw SR Orange and Kevin Enderman get a really scary moment coming down the hill into turn number 12 just a few moments ago as well, right ahead of them. So very scary moment for that number 12 car, Ford S-Rock Orange. Not sure how he managed to hang on to that one, but I guess that just shows how skilled of a driver he must be.
And absolutely, I think in part does for sure, because it's not just about having the fastest car and the fastest ability to get around the track. It's about having the racecraft to harness that ability and know when to challenge. For example, looks like World of Sim Racing Team Junior knew they had a slight chance, but there was a chance of contact with how tight they were to the inside of turn 6. Backs off, going to try and reset.
And he got that huge run when GT Temple Racing went a little bit wide off in the curves of turn 5, and that caused him to lose a few miles an hour of speed, which allowed World of Sim Race Team Junior to close on in. They had to back out of it, though, because they got pinched right down to the inside. They very wisely, might I add, backed out of that overtaking attempt, because if they kept going for it, it probably would have sent GT Temple Racing going right around.
SK Motorsports is now off the racetrack, too, as NAB Racing wants to gain a spot on said racetrack. Bumping and banging side by side. This is for 4th position once again in the class. They're nearly making contact. They make contact. NAB Racing gets spun. They keep it off the tires. They get back going, but that's going to lose them at least 3, 4, 5 seconds. And 2 more spots on top of that.
And the second they went into turn 3 looking like that, I knew that was not going to end well at all. And sure enough, Jean-Philippe Gendron turned Martin June around from NAB Racing, going for an overtake, managed to get the spot, but at what cost? He's got damage on his left front now, and he's no doubt got a penalty coming in for him as well.
Yeah, that time it looked like June was trying to get very dicey and very close. They were off into the grass nearly, though. Oh, Gendron was in there. He went off in the grass underneath the rumble strips. That's how tight they were battling for that position. NAB Racing lucky to be able to get around with no damage whatsoever, and with only losing a couple spots. However, there's dirt now and grass going to be on those tires.
And thankfully, with the way this track is, he's likely going to be able to get the grass and dirt off those tires pretty quickly. Still looking just a little bit off the pace, but he's quickly going to be looking to get that dirt off his tires. He's going to be looking to get right back into this fight for position. And he's going to run just a little bit clipped the left side. We've seen that time and time again today from every single one of your classes. Those drivers just barely clipping the grass at the exit of turn 12.
And now back and going still, they go once again. Last time by 130.4, they lost about a total of 6 seconds. Up in front is a slow battle starting to form up. SimSport News Racing, they've been quietly on the very low some parts of the day, just driving and minding their own business. They're in the top 5 right now and defending Crawford, because a lot of the drivers that usually run in the top 5 the past few rounds have absolutely struggled in this championship deciding race.
That is in fact true, and Eric Bourdais, driving for the SimSport Racing News, he is going to have to start defending against Alex Crawford in just a few moments, and no doubt Martin June is going to be looking to join the fight behind as well. Already he's taking a bit more of a middle line, not hugging the apron as much. Ahead of them, Wolfgang Wildenauer for Real Pixel Motorsport in his MX-5 machine might have something to say about this battle here picking up.
Yeah, again, worst possible spot if you're a Real Pixel. Wolfgang Wildenauer has been basically in the wrong place at the wrong time in some cases. There's a reason he's got some back-end damage. Able to let him on by cleanly this time, able to get to the high side of 11 and 12. But look at the run June is getting, this time by a 122.8, a tenth quicker than Crawford. As he's making a potential 3-car battle now going to the S's.
This could get interesting here if he can manage to get this work. He's not going to go for the move in turn 2 like Jean-Philippe Gendron did right ahead of them. So Crawford going to stay behind for now in his huge ass blue machine. Potentially look for a move and going into turn 7. Will he try to do that, or will he try to wait until turn 10?
That's going to be an absolutely big-time question. It looks like Crawford thought about it into 6. Did break early, though. Able to get a better run, though, through the apex off. Bit of smoke being kicked up, though, by Bourdois as he tries to hold on. The most points they've gained this season for this team that's holding on to the 5th position, it was 81 points. They gained those points at Zolder. That in terms of finishing position for the point standings for 2019 Season 2 would put them 3rd.
And it looks like there was a little bit of a contact as well from to the back end of Bourdois from Alex Crawford. Just about turned that car, flashed that headlights furiously, and managed to get around him in turn 10. And that was just about one of the biggest incidents we've seen all day so far.
Yeah, they definitely made contact because SimSport tried to get around the MX-5 slowly. And I think that Crawford was trying to maybe use him as a pick, or wasn't expecting him to make the move that late. He still got the pass done. However, there was that slight bit of contact you mentioned, and they're still going to have to work on some more of them. Take a look at this.
This is, we got one car off in the grass as well. That is actually Glenn Reed for W Racing B, who is stopped on the inside of turn 3. What happened to you?
See the battle, the pass now for Crawford. Let's take a look at Glenn Reed, though, because you see him stopped inside the S's for some reason here. And let's take a look at why. He was about 5th. It looks like he might have blown up. He was last in the class. And a bad day for WR Racing has gone to the woodshed.
And that is exactly what happened. Blew the engine while downshifted into turn 3 and immediately pulled it off the track, got out of everybody's way, and that is going to be day over for Glenn Reed, who has had serious mechanical issues with that car. Smoke out of the back end, and just ended his day in a heartbeat right there.
Yeah, it's so easy in some cases to have that type of money shift, as it's called, when you're trying to maybe upshift and you accidentally downshift and end up over-revving the engine or downshifting into the wrong gear. What do you do as a driver to try and make sure you don't do that, whether it's you have the paddles or whether you have an 8-shifter?
I would say you really just need to make sure that you know the car and know its limits. It's something that I've done several times, and as a driver, there is nothing that is more disappointing and upsetting when you hear that sound under downshifting. Here comes Martin June trying to make a move, going into turn number 2, backs out of that one, and Eric Bourdois going hard on defense as well. So both these drivers, it is beginning to pick up. Martin June potentially getting a little bit impatient for being spun around earlier on.
And I want to blame him a little bit from the contact. However, it was the tight racing that led to said contact. He wants to try and get up to 6, to get up to potentially back up to Crawford and more so. Bourdois started to really fall off the pace. A 125 won last time by. Crawford, once he got by, went to the 123s. That's how slow right now Bourdois is currently running, unfortunately for him, with some of the damage that's on his car, as now Racing gets in the draft. 144, make it 146 now down the straight. That is now 5+ miles per hour quicker now for June as he gets to the right side. It looks like Bourdois is just going to give him the space. Potentially on the inside line. Yes, he does.
So Martin June going by on the outside of turn 10A, and he's going to go for a little bit of a slide on the exit of turn 10B, down through turns 11 and 12. Going to get that car back under control, and it looks like Eric Bourdois tried to make a move, maybe to capitalize on that little mistake.
Up one more position he goes. Next spot will put him in the top 5 if he can catch back up to Hugh Jazz Blue. They're right now separated by a couple different MX-5s as you see them go up the S's right now, up the hill. Dirk Fetterman's holding up some of the traffic up the road for them. They get on by what is Jorg Wasmus for GT Temple Racing. They still have to get by Diego Vasquez. Dunquist, big trouble in front though. It involves Gold Racing Team White and that huge Jazz car we were talking about, because there was a spin on a lockup behind the lap trap of Ava Vervatic.
Andrew Fawcett locked it up, trying to keep it out from hitting Dirk Fetterman, and Jean-Philippe Genja with nowhere to go, just drove right into the door of him. Nothing Genja could have done in that situation. Nowhere he could have go. Almost caused a track block as everybody has to take evasive action onto the rumble strips.
That car's been really beat up. It looks like more so, not even a lockup. It looked like that car, as soon as it planted down on the suspension, just hit the ground, spun the car out, spins both of them out. He spun again just a couple moments ago off of turn 7, and that car is completely destroyed at this point. The front suspension totaled on that 137.
And the incident that happened off of turn 7, he just lost the back end trying to get around turn 7 and put the power down, and just spun the car the rest of the way around by getting to the throttle to make sure he would not hit the wall and make things worse than it had to be. So that is so unfortunate for Alex Crawford in his huge ass gold machine. They were doing so well for the majority of the race, and unfortunately for them now, it's just all gone away for them in a flash.
It's been a rough one, this one. Hugh Jazz Blue was the one who had bad luck for the first couple rounds. For the past, for some races, Hugh Jazz Gold had some bad luck at Silverstone. They have not had the best of luck, the gold team today. The blue car, however, is still in 4th position. That leads to a question, though, going back to Fawcett and his situation for his team. You've had hardware issues. You now have got suspension damage on the 137 machine. What do you exactly do at this point, knowing your car is to the point where it's bottoming out and nearly spinning out half the time on the racetrack in 17th overall for the 137?
Well, I would say if you want to keep making things worse, bring it into the pits and get the necessary damage you need to make the car at least handle properly, get that fixed up, and then get the car back out on track. Because if you wait for all the repairs to be done, it could likely take sometimes 10, 15 minutes or more. So don't wait for the full time. Just wait for what you need. We have an O.
The O is because, remember Kevin Enderman and his run in second overall? Well, he ended up slamming the inside wall off of turn 7, making the left side wall, damaged the front end, had to come straight to the pit lane to get some repairs. A big oopsie for Sorg Racing Orange. They were running second overall, and that leaves just 2 undamaged cars in the entire class left in the prototypes.
And that incident was brought about when Kevin Enderman got loose on the exit of 7, overcorrected, locked the brakes up, and tapped that wall on the left side, and just nothing that car could have done. He overcorrected trying to check up for, I believe it was Wolfgang Wildenau for Real Pixel Motorsport.
Yeah, and look at that left side damage especially. That's where that damage hit on the bumper. This is what caused it here. And you'll see, hits the rumble strips on the inside. That just starts to hook. He knows the second he starts to lock it up that something was wrong, just couldn't lock it up in time to avoid the wall.
Now, at least he locked it up when he did, because if he didn't and that car kept rolling, that would have been much, much bigger. So good job on Kevin Enderman for at least getting the minimal amount of damage possible, and that is one of the hazards of lap traffic, especially when you're in a faster class like that. And that's the thing about these radicals as well. You have to really watch the throttle in them, because if you stamp it, it's like a Formula 1 car. It'll just snap around you, and you won't know what happened to you.
Yeah, and it's been that kind of a case, surprisingly, for a few different teams today. We were kind of expecting a crazy race, not as crazy as it has turned out. As we look on board now with GT Temple Racing here with Wasmres as he tries to reel back in World Sim Racing Team Junior in the traffic at this point. We're approaching 1 hour to go on the clock here for season number 2, with championships still on the line here on RacespotTV for the ClubSport Series for the season finale here at Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta. As we enter this final hour, enter the halfway point of the final pit window, what do you think is going through the minds of some of these teams and some of their strategists to try and figure out how do we try and either recover spots or try and come away with the victory?
Well, they're probably trying to take everything into account, from other traffic patterns to other team strategies to their own fuel strategies as well. You have to keep an eye out as well that some of these drivers, they did take doubled stints, and some of them have not changed drivers yet as well. So we are going to be seeing probably a very, very wide range of different pit stop strategies all across the field right now. Do you think there is potentially room for a 3-stop this race as well for some teams?
No. Straight up, no. Potentially, maybe, yes, depending on when these drivers have to come in and potentially a splash and go. But at the rate we're running at, it is looking like a 2-stopper in terms of the fuel window, unless something changes. All it takes is a virtual safety car to completely change that, though, in this race. We have not seen that really since the early parts of for season 2 this year. I think we had 1 or 2 virtual safety cars this season overall. That's about it. We have not seen any since really the past couple months.
And certainly none that I can remember, so I think based on how spread out drivers are beginning to get, a virtual safety car is a little out of the question at this point in time. So these guys looks to be running green right through to the end of the season now.
And that's what I think the drivers want to do, because drivers such as Nab Racing want to run up plus in the green for positions, as well as go plus in terms of more points for the race. Remember, Nab Racing coming into today, the points leaders for the season, and trying to clinch the championship for the sport class. They were the winners at Daytona. They finished 2nd at Silverstone, 3rd at Laguna Seca. The reason they were not in a position quite yet to clinch it up, they had a rough race at Zolder, only 47 total points gained at Zolder.
And speaking of Nab Racing, they have closed that gap in to the back end of Alex Crawford, getting for a little bit of a slide on the exit of turn 12, managing to make their way around a lapped car. And this is where emotions could begin to be picked up. Remember, Crawford turned Martin June coming into this very corner here, if I remember correctly.
And we'll have to see what they do here in terms of this battle. It's going to get potentially tight between these two drivers. Last time by, June nearly a full second quicker once more. He seems to be getting much better off the corner exits right now, especially in the second half of the racetrack. Let's see how he tries to attack Crawford. Late breaks his way in this time. able to arc it down, avoid the rumble strips while being next to it. Late brakes once again, Crawford against the rumble strips, while Nab Racing does not go across. They have gained a total of more than 2+ seconds in the past 3 laps alone if you add up the times on the bottom right side of your screen.
And especially for lap 54, it seems they closed in by over a second on that lap alone. So very heartfelt drive from Nab Racing as well. You can definitely tell they've really been trying to work as hard as they can to work their way up back and get their positions back as well. And things are beginning to pick up as well. I think if they go for that slow and slow out strategy that we were talking about earlier in this race, they might be able to close in a little bit more, because at this point, Alex Crawford, he's also taking a late braking strategy, trying to get as many tenths as he can under braking as well.
And do you think that's because he knows that the pace is picking up maybe from Nab Racing, trying to maybe defend back that spot, especially since, look at the times again a little bit on the bottom side. Nab Racing was able to pick up even more so time last time by nearly, pardon me, nearly a couple tenths. Lost, in fact, pardon me.
I would say the answer is yes, 100%. That's exactly why Alex Crawford is going for that late braking strategy. He's trying to put as much distance between himself and June under braking, so that way he will not have as big of a run when they come onto the straightaways. And with help from Carter Condinger from SK Motorsport that just worked his way through, Alex Crawford, we have
in trouble for Fawcett again. Remember, Fawcett and his destroyed car for Huge Ass Gold? They spun out again off of turn 1 this time. This time, though, they tried to pass an MX-5 and went off the rumble strips, trying to get by Gold Racing Team, and looped it around on the exit.
And there was contact as well, because Matthias Goldager, he does have damage on the left side of that car, so there was a door bang as well for that crash. So Andrew Fawcett, the bad luck continues to pick up for that Huge Ass Gold car as he does a full 360 and brings it in before he manages to get it back going, and that car has just been completely beat up time and time again.
Should mention that Dirk Fetterman had been one of the drivers that said, please don't do that in turn 1. That is why, as Fawcett spins again in front of Bombshell.
And this time it was on his own doing, got into the grass going into the corner, missed the apex and just ran wide and spun that car around. Very close call from Eric Mick in that Bombshell car as well, and Greg Gruber, who were coming on through. So Andrew Fawcett, he's got to definitely change something about that strategy, because what he's doing, it clearly is not working for him right now.
It gets to a point, too, where I want to ask your opinion on this. If you got a car destroyed as much as that, even with some of the repairs you can get, do you think it's worth it to stay on the racetrack, knowing that you're a potential risk for some of the drivers around you? No offense again to Huge Ass's organization and the drivers or the cars. But right now, the way that car is driving, it does not look like it's happy whatsoever, and it looks like that front suspension has significant problems. What do you do as a team knowing you're struggling as much as you are, last in your class at the moment?
Now, I can't speak for Huge Ass, obviously, so this is going to be completely my own opinion if I was organizing that team, but I would say bring the car in, get it fixed as much as you can without losing too much time, and get it back out on track, because it's at the point where if he spins out many more times, he's going to be labeled as a hazard at this point.
And right now you can see, guess who's catching up again? It's Patrick Young. He is the only driver on the lead lap. He is 1:48 seconds in front of Graphite Racing and nearly having to go in the grass to get by some of this traffic, mind you. To get on by cleanly that time, thankfully. But for Patrick Young and his team, as long as the car stays on the track, they're in a great position, up by now 1:50 seconds compared to Frank Osterhaus and Graphite Racing, that have just not been on the ball today in terms of pace, a full second off each time.
I think it's all in the hands of SimRC.de Strawberry at this point. They've pulled over a minute gap, so I think at this point the only reason why they would actually lose out on that lead is if they were to have some kind of really huge incident.
Spin right in the backdrop, look at that. That was next to Huge Ass Gold, somebody trying to overtake him, I believe. That was, again, German sim racing friends that went sideways through turn 10A and turn B. For Payne, it's not been a fun day for the machine. Sideways a couple times today in his Porsche.
And so the bad luck continues to mount for a couple of these drivers as we're looking at the replay of what happened now. His German friends racing. Oh, he lost that all on his own, so no contact this time. Huge Ass Gold lost it under braking, it seems. Potential lockup, and then when he let off, the back end just stepped away from him.
He's still 11th right now. On the bright side, he's in front of both Huge Ass Gold technically, who is a lap down compared to him. as well as German Sim Racing Orange, his teammate. However, his teammate's now half a track behind instead of now 3/4 a track because of the spin. Behind that too are one of the teams that have had a beating and is now in 3rd spot in the class. It's Kershaw that is still trying to chug along with under an hour to go in the clock and try and find a way to recover time. Since his damage, he is now about 2 seconds off his qualifying pace, yes, but he is still not able to reel in the lead cars because Fisher Motorsport's been quicker in the 122s, while he's been stuck in the 123s.
And another driver that just suffered from another bout of bad luck was Martin June going into turn number 2. He lost the back end as well under braking going over the crest and went off and into the grass. Looks like he got a slowdown penalty from that as well. So no contact from Martin June, but just went off and into the grass. So he's going to have some more work ahead of him to catch back up to Alex Cofford. So again, the mistakes are beginning to mount up for a couple of these other drivers.
And what do you do knowing that you have under an hour to go in this race? You can't afford to make any more mistakes, especially if you're in a points battle. Well, what are you telling your driver if you're right now watching in the paddock or watching or wherever you are? What do you tell them to try and keep them focused?
Eyes front, head down, don't lose focus, whatever you do, as Andrew Fawcett has just gone off again. This time at the bottom of the S's, stopped right in the middle of the track, lost it on the curves and overcorrected, and stopped right in the middle of the racing line. So a couple of drivers having to take evasive action. He quickly drove it off the track and right to the wall, but Andrew Fawcett, oh boy, I would not want to be him right about now.
Yeah, this is to the point where it's getting sad. Should note, Real Pixel Motorsport brought both of their cars in early on. Bombshell Motorsports did not make the racetrack today, a part of the DNF/DNSs for today. He's the last car on the track. It's getting worse and worse for Fawcett at this point. Like, you gotta feel bad for him because he was looking okay. He was looking pretty good before his hardware failure. And since then, that whole entire team has struggled to be able to do, well, unfortunately, anything but keep the car rolling at this point while trying not to spin.
And we have to remember, he is in a points battle. He is in 4th place for the overall team standings for your sport class as well. So Andrew Fawcett really hurting that team's chances of being able to take that championship lead. And it's just beginning to look completely impossible at this point with all the bad luck that car has had over the course of this race.
On board we go once again with the battle for 4th for the MX-5s. As it's down, as some time was gained by GT Temple Racing. We've been following along with them a little bit. It's one of their better runs this season. We've seen them do well in some of the championships on the iRacing service. They didn't compete at Zolder last round. However, they did show some speed at Daytona, which was a high drafting racetrack. This is one of the tracks that you can slightly compare that to with the run all the way to 10A. And that seems to be working a little bit in their wheelhouse today for them to be running this top 5.
Absolutely, 100% I agree with you on that one, as Wasmus continues to try to close in that gap up front to Diego Vasquez in World of Sim Racing Jr. Gonna be later on the brakes for GT Temple. They're gonna manage to just work their way on through, and they're still gonna have that draft as they come off of the final corner.
Separated by half a second is the gap. Mind you, they still have to come in potentially one more time at the very least. And this one, 55 minutes to go on the clock here on RacespotTV. Remember, this was about the max the drivers could go on field the last time by, so that is something to look at for sure at this point. Fisher Motorsports, meanwhile, has just been passed for 4th overall on the racetrack, should note. SK Motorsports, while down 4 laps to the overall class lead for the prototypes, has recovered to a top 5 overall in the race.
So all over the field, we've had a lot of position swapping going on for this entire race. We're going to continue to see position swapping going on for the remainder of 54 and a half minutes of this race as well. It's definitely hasn't gone away. A lot of this action still yet to pick up, and we've still got battles that need to be settled.
Let's take a look at your top 8 of each class as we approach the final pit window here at Road Atlanta. Let's start off right now with the prototype class. They started off with just 5 drivers today. Only 2 of them have been attrition-free so far. SimRacing.de Strawberry, who's a lap ahead. 3rd spot is SK Motorsports. The reason why there's a split, they currently have a couple of the Porsches between them on the leaderboard. Then way on down are two DNFs. Sork Racing Orange and WR Racing have both had to go into the garage to get repairs. Pardon me, Sork Racing Orange is still on the track technically. 8 laps down, however, and needing some kind of attrition to gain a position. Meanwhile, let's go to those Porsches, the Sport class. That's part of the reason for the split, with Team Vikings Valhall being that car between them in the top 5. Fisher Motorsport, though, they're on the move and quick. They're the fastest car on the racetrack because they haven't been held up by traffic and able to keep their car clean. They're moving up quickly, just a gap, slowing down to a few tenths of a second. Behind that, though, Porsche Bezo by Sork Rennsport Esports sits there with Huge Ass Blue, NAB Racing inside the top 5. Synsport News Racing, Gold Racing Team White. Bombshell Motorsports, a minute 13 seconds back, rounds out the top 8 for that class. Let's look at the Club Sport class. Meanwhile, they've ran 14 less laps compared to Sim RCD Strawberry. However, they've still been very quick. The guy who's been up at the front, though, is a man that's been driving since the drop of the green flag in Quintella. He's up in the front right now by 21 seconds, and he's trying to keep that gap over World of Sim Racing Team and the red-hot Dirk Fetterman of IVRA Vervatic, who's sitting in 3rd. World of Sim Racing Team Juniors in 4th. GT Temple Racing 5th. To round out that grouping, Team Vikings Valhall, Real Pixel Motorsport, Gold Racing Team round the drivers on the racetrack. Real Pixel Motorsport still rolling the lap down. Gold Racing Team a few laps down. They're bunched up together. That's a rundown. Your top 8 on the racetrack. 52 minutes, 15 seconds to go on the clock. It's going to be a battle that will go all the way to the finish for some drivers, because while it looked to be calm, looked to be clean for the first hour or so, after the pits, cars had troubles. Speaking of which, take a look. It's Bombshell.
And Alex Crawford has gone into the pits as well. We've just had an incident as well with Eric Mick, who has just gone off at the bottom of the hill as well. And what happened here might potentially got loose on the curves. Here he is coming through turn 2, down through turn 3, and through the S's. Was it a loss on the curves? Potential clip of the grass, gets over the curves and just overcorrects the car, exactly like Andrew Fawcett did a few laps earlier. And speaking of which, Shane Cameron is going to be hopping into the car now for Huge Ass Blue, who is currently on the lane.
So pit windows open. Remember, Huge Ass was the one who opened it up last time. That means we're about to see guys like George Gruber duck down to the pits, exactly what he's doing right now. So the pit window's open for the Porsches first. We're going to start also seeing the prototype second and the MX-5s third. They're all bunched up in the same grouping of laps, though, within the same 5 or 6 laps, give or take. We're going to start seeing drivers duck on down. As you mentioned, Shane Cameron onto the track after a 33-second stop.
So Shane Cameron there. So Huge Ass Blue making their driver change for the race right now, and they came out right in front of Tor Anders Bervin for Team Vikings Valhall, that class leader, keep in mind. And they have yet to make both a driver change, I believe, and their second pit stop. So I would not be surprised if we saw a driver change for Team Vikings Valhall when they came back in for their second stop.
Tor Anders Bervin has been in the car for the entire run. Manuel Mayer, he has stayed in the car as well since the drop. So the top 2 for their class, for the Porsches you're looking at on your screen, have yet to make a driver swap at this point. So that's going to still make things a little bit interesting up front. We might have to sacrifice some time. Kirchhoff still has yet to make a driver swap as well. NAB Racing also in the 4th spot, yet to make a driver swap. In fact, everyone in the top 5 when looking at things have yet to make a driver swap. Did not sound like a broken record, but that's the case.
Do you think that is why they've managed to pull such a lead, is because they have not made their driver swap set?
Well, with the drivers who took the driver swap, I know I'm sounding like a record and a half now. Now, they took tires. So those drivers who took the driver swap went as long as 53 plus seconds at this point. Speaking of pit stops, here comes Mayer. He's going to try and go for the undercut compared to the class leader.
And we've talked about how in previous races that can work out if you play it perfectly. You get those fresher tires for the lap or two that you're going to be out there, so you can begin to close that gap and take over that lead when you're in the pits. And that looks to be what Mayer is going to be looking to do as he brings it down onto the lane. We are going to be seeing a driver swap for the 184 Fisher Motorsport machine. It will be Benjamin Fisher to hop on in.
He's in as well as an MX-5. It is the leader of the MX-5s, Quinn Teller, who's been running on his very lonesome this entire run. He's going to jump out of the car for the first time just before the limit today for how long you have to sit in the car. That's going to be Philip Roberts ducking in. The car's behind as well. Again, Drawn's also coming into the pits. Off and away goes the Fisher Motorsport machine, however. They had a 31-second pit stop even with the driver swap. So off and away they go to try and see if that's going to be enough to get them a win.
And Tasha Edwards going to be hopping in for Gold Racing Team White, replacing Bervin in the pits there. So new driver as well for the 102 machine, currently running 9th place overall. And I believe that will be 6th in class now. They're going to put that car up on the jacks and get fresh tires on it.
Everybody's starting to come on in, it looks like, for some of the drivers. A lot of the lead cars staying out this time by, but Fisher, I think, is trying to play the long game. And they also, of course, we've seen it a couple times this season, some teams have not ended up hitting their minimum driver stints, which you do have a requirement for how long you stay in the car. This was a whole discussion point, mind you, as early as Laguna Seca for the 2019/Season 2 season. You don't make a driver swap within a certain amount of time on the season schedule, you do not end up getting points for the race. You get put dead last on the track before the drivers who did not reach minimum contact. Speaking of contact, Wildenauer has had some.
And that was going into turn 10A. Wildenauer almost brake checked Matthias Goldegger, and who was running right behind him, 2 laps behind. So Goldegger for Gold Racing Team just absolutely drove right through Wildenauer, who went off and into the dirt in the middle of turn 10A. Replay up on your screen, and that tells you all you really need to know about that incident right there.
Now you see right there some of the contact. Slow car on the left, right side of the track as well, letting him back on by as he ducks down to the pit lane. It's been a rough one for Real Pixel Motorsport. They're 7 on the class, but they've been just in the wrong place at the wrong time, unfortunately, when it comes to some of the traffic. That's how they got a lot of their damages. A lot of the battles we've been seeing seem to happen or get most active right around his back bumper.
It is such a shame for Real Pixel Motorsports. If there is any silver lining to that incident, he does have the perfect view to watch all of these fights for the lead playing out right ahead of him.
I don't think he's thinking about that. I think he's thinking, what are you guys doing? Please don't run me over. He has a quicker pit stop, though, of 39 seconds as he's off and away. We do have more pit stops as well, including the Team Vikings machine ducking down to the pits. They've made their driver swap. It's Erling Bomer behind the wheel now of their car.
And up front, Rien Kirchhoff in for Porsche Basel by Sorg Esports Racing in as well in their 168 Porsche. They're currently sitting in the lane as well. They're going to be off and away before Bohmer can manage to get the car back down onto the surface. So Team Vikings Valhall going to be still staying behind in the pits while Kirchhoff brings that car back out onto the track.
To remind the folks at home, the limits for the drivers, why you're seeing a lot of them now, is the most you can stay in the car, 1 hour, 40 minutes. The minimum you have to be in the car, 15 minutes, technically, as some teams in the past have gone with 3 drivers in some of the races in this series. Right now, we are just about at that range where if you don't make your driver swap now or at the stop, if you didn't make one at least, you were at risk of not making that minimum requirement for one of your drivers. Eric Mick coming into the pits now.
Eric Mick from Bombshell Motorsports. We've seen that car have quite a bit of pace as he brings that car on down into the lane. Will Eric Mick be staying in the car? I would not be surprised if he did, but no, he's actually going to hop on out. So Eric Mick leaving the car from Bombshell Motorsports.
And the pit entry is going to become dangerous because German sim racing friends spun out on the pit entry, trying to go down the hill, block the pit entry. Was able to roll back going. That's why he's slow on the racetrack. No caution, no collisions, thankfully, but he lost another 10 seconds in 11.
And that looked to me like the car, there was a little wiggle from the back end going over the hill, so it looked like the car just got light coming over the hill and he slid coming on down. Thankfully, no contact for that car, so apart from some overheated and slightly bruised tires, that car is going to be able to still have all the pace it once had.
Thing is, though, the tires have been punched at least 6-7 times on this run, unfortunately for him. Make it 8 as he goes on the rumble strips. Make it 9 potentially for the right side tires. It's been a rough one for them. Let's talk about that run out from 11 and 12, though. Oh, how hard is it or how easy is it to try to end up losing the car? like that on the corner exit and just lose the back end.
Well, with these cars, I haven't driven these cars personally myself, but I know that for other cars, it often doesn't take much, especially when you're going over such a hill like that, like turn 11. The way the hill is just made, the car can get really, really light when coming over. I've had it happen in several different cars myself. The car can get really light when coming on over. So for some cars, especially cars like these, it really doesn't take much to get that car unsettled.
Yeah, we're seeing some of that unsettling now in some of these rumble strips, the way his suspension's bouncing. Let's look towards 6 and 7, meanwhile, as Gold Racing Team White looks to make the leaderboard bounce. They're gaining a lot of time and quick again on the blue car that has already pit for their strategy, Gold Racing Team White. For comparison's sake, they have yet to pit still, I believe. Pardon me, have in fact, yes, indeed, for Taj Edwards behind the wheel. Pardon me, they are just pit on lap 69. Taj Edwards, their star driver for that car, able to make the pass quick.
Now, will Sean Cameron be able to pull the draft coming out of turn 7 and make something coming down in the run to turn 10? He's going to have a long drafting period, but Edwards gets on the power early in the corner, and he absolutely pulls a massive gap, so nothing that Cameron will have to do. It looks like he's going to just have to watch Gold Racing Team White just pull away from the lead.
Yeah, that car, despite being bounced around a couple times, Gold Racing Team White still has some pace in it. They're still running 123.3s. That is faster than NAB Racing, who is currently in the lead with the pit window being opened up at this point. So they might be able to recover at least the top 5 potentially if they can keep the race clean and traffic-free.
That is true. Yoon, as we just said, he is up in the class lead right now. He started in 11th place overall this season. Now, can Yoon manage to hang on to the lead is going to be the big question here. He has had some poor luck. He's going to be held by Mazdas as well coming through the field. And we do have their lead overall into the pits. SimRC.de Strawberry going to be replaced with Rudolf Nagel hopping in for Patrick Young.
Rudolf Nagel, I think one of the first times we've seen him this season for sure in this car. For SimRC.de Strawberry, they did look potentially to try and add a second car for this round. Of course, too late to enter when they asked at the time. But this is a good chance for a guy like Nagel to get experience. 39 laps each for Dolzer and Young. A chance now to close it on out. A dominant lead of more than a lap ahead. He's going to have at least 32 to 33 laps around the racetrack to seal it.
Oh, absolutely, and I think there's absolutely nothing that can happen at this point. Even if they spun out twice, they would still be able to have at least a 30-second lead on that car just because of how far ahead they are. They have lapped the whole field this race, and it's not the first time we've seen them do that either, keep in mind. So that's the Strawberry Machine, clearly the one to beat, and it doesn't look like anybody's going to be able to do it here at Road Atlanta either.
Some MX-5s also coming in at this time. June's coming in for NAB Racing. He's yet to make a driver swap and is very close to the minute limit for being able to drive that car at the moment. He again is pinning from the lead. Also some other cars leaving the pits, including Graphite Racing and Racecraft Esports at the moment. So the window's still again wide open. 40 minutes to go. James Ewens, though, in the 181, just got out of a spin off the exit of turn 7 and is back going once more after burning up the back tire.
So we have another spin, replay up on the screen, lost the back end going in, so potentially unsettled from turn 6, spun that car around, managed to get it off the racing line, got it going right away, so no damage so far in that car apart from some burned up tires. Meanwhile, Martin June going to be back out onto the track from the pits now, but it will be Ring Kirchhoff into the lead for your sport field.
The musical chairs continue as World of Sim Racing Team Junior has pit from the top 3 for the MX-5s. NAB Racing puts their seat into P number 3 for the said chairs as they try and gain some time there right now in terms of drivers who have pit on the racetrack. They have actually overcut Team Viking's Valhall on the racetrack for what could be virtual P1.
And there you go, so we potentially swap from P1.
Virtual 2, I should say, pardon me.
Virtual for P2, so a little change in that one there. So Fisher Motorsport, that you were saying we could have had a swap as well. So NAB Racing, they have been dropping back just a little bit. Remember, they lost 2 spots overall in the lead on that pit stop there. So Fisher Motorsport going to be looking to put the power down now, be able to try to hopefully work the weapon, maybe even potentially go for the lead in their class.
I should note, the reason I'm saying virtual P2, there is a car that is pitted in front of them. It's Porsche Basel by RacespotTV. The problem is, if you don't have a second driver, you don't get the points. Well, unofficially, Kirchhoff is in the class lead in the 168 through traffic, a little bit ahead of Fisher Motorsport. Fisher Motorsport would get the official class lead if the results stayed right now, as Kirchhoff does not have a second driver for his team, it appears.
It doesn't look like that either, as Kirchhoff, I believe he was the driver that set that qualifying lap as well, that put them up into 6th place overall at the start of this race.
Should note that this team, for some rounds, has not ran for points. They have been looking quick even with the contact, while they will be unofficially in P1 even without a driver swap. Right now, they would end up getting put towards the bottom of the results officially, as they have passed by that time limit as well for the driver, or nearly approaching that limit, I should say.
So it does look like that team, like you said, they haven't really been running for points because they haven't seen a whole lot of driver swaps coming from that car all season. So Ring Kirchhoff looking to run this race right out to the very end. And Benjamin Fisher from behind, do you think he could potentially put the power down and have a fight for the lead on our hands in your sport class, or sorry, the virtual lead in the Porsche class coming up into the final half hour of this race?
That's a possibility. This time by, with the lap traffic, Sorg Esports' car ran a 125. Fisher Motorsport getting through the traffic a 123.8. So the gap is closing and quick. Fisher Motorsport's been the fastest car for the second half, for basically the entire second half of the race. They're having the drive of the season for them here at Road Atlanta.
And meanwhile, Kirchhoff up front as well. He's having to have some difficulties letting Martin Green through in that radical as well. Now, interesting story about these two. Martin Green is actually several laps down from Ring Kirchhoff. He spun out. It looks like he crashed earlier because he is only on lap 48 for his class, while the leaders, they're on lap 82. So clearly Green has had an incident, which we likely looked at earlier on in this race. And when Ring Kirchhoff was coming through, almost ran him over in going into turn 2 on the last time through. No contact, nobody went off track. But there has been some confusion on who's to let who through here at this point.
Yeah, there's been a lot of cars that have nearly been bunching up. Take a look, for example, where Rudolf Nagel is, where he nearly has run over some drivers in his class if you look towards that way, for example. We also have a car in the pits, though, is GT Tempo Racing. They've made a driver swap back. That looks to be a scheduled stop for them in the MX-5s. A lot of the class drivers had yet to pit. They've been able to stretch it a little bit longer for them for a couple of these drivers. GT Temple, one of those teams that really stretched it out.
So Simon Esches hopping right back into that car. They're going to get off and away with a 33.4 second pit stop. 56 seconds in total on pit lane. They're going to come out right in front of Martin June for Nav Racing. Right behind them, going to have to let them through. June will go around the outside of turn 3. And they're going to be likely trying to hunt down Danny Fontepedra for World of Sim Racing Team Junior right ahead of them.
Our cars also into the pits, I should note as well. Gold Racing Team that has actually flipped over once, mind you. They're still running, surprisingly, in P8, so they only lost 2 laps despite flipping upside down and having to take a tow truck somehow.
And surprisingly little damage on that car, all things considered as well. Obviously, the right side of the car is severely bent in on the front end, but still, surprisingly, that car has not nearly as much damage as I saw. So it's clearly that car does still have some pace, and they might be able to still at least come away with some decent points.
Lots of points still on the line, lots of positions still on the line. Can the drivers keep the cars clean? And can they find their way to victory lane? 35 minutes and under on the clock here for the season finale of the Club Sport Series for Season 2 for round number 5 here in Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta. Why don't we go to a RaceSpot fan immersion and follow along as our overall race leader, if we can go to that, the number 77 of Rudolf Nagel, looks to try and hold on and tries to navigate through some of the craziest traffic we have seen all day today. You're watching RacespotTV for the season finale of the Club Sport Series powered by DGFX Racing. You've been following along with Rudolf Nagel as he's been able to get around the track and still lead by about a full lap. As this has all gone on for the RacespotTV fan immersion, a lot of drivers have had some troubles, to say the very least. Whether it's big-time battles trying to avoid contact, or in the case if you're a fan of Sorg Racing Orange, more trouble this time off of turn 12, even more significant back wing damage as part of their incident off of turn 12. Just as we were finishing off that RacespotTV fan immersion, we were able to get across the racetrack after being stuck in the grass for 20 seconds to get to the pit lane, though, Nolan.
And that was another case of the back end of the car just getting light coming over the hill, and then a little bit of an overcorrection. The car started to drift towards the pit entry lane, and the reason why he was stopped there was because that is a very blind hill, and the cars coming over there so incredibly quickly. So thankfully, likely was using that F3 relative black box to be able to keep track of where everybody was to spot the gap in the cars, because if you didn't have that open, you would never be able to tell if it was safe or not.
Speaking of telling if you're safe or not, right now these drivers might have their black boxes open to see how close they've gotten to 2/10. It's a battle between Del Rio and Fetterman. Fetterman up to second in the class. IVRA was as deep as in the top 5 today when they had Bastian Selman in the car for the first stint of the day today. Since putting in Fetterman, one of the top MX-5 drivers on the service, mind you, we have seen time and time again. He's been able to pull that car forward on the track and in terms of pace. It's going to be hard, though, to reach Torque Freak the more they battle.
It is indeed, but Del Rio, he's getting closer and closer to the back end of Fetterman. Fetterman got the back end, stepped out just a little bit through turn 3, down through the S's, and Del Rio is just crowding the mirrors of that car. A little bit of a power slide coming through turn 5. That'll cause Del Rio to lose a couple of precious tenths coming off of the corner.
And they reeled it in, and mind you, Fetterman reeled them in from pretty far back, mind you, to be able to catch back up to David Del Rio. He's been running times the 1:37.4 since this battle began. Still having to defend that line. It's going to be still difficult to try and even get the second spot because Del Rio, he's got the draft. The defensive line coming up from Fetterman, though, trying to get as close to the grass as he can. Now trying to get as close to the right side as he can to make it difficult as he knows traffic is coming.
Gonna make way for that Porsche. Will Del Rio make a move coming into turn 10? It's looking like he might not unless he goes for a dive bomb. Gonna stay back in line. Backs off a little bit so he doesn't run through Dirk Fetterman. So Del Rio gonna actually back off here just a little bit. Give the 225 some room. Closes right back in on the exit of turn 11 though. Coming up through turn 12. There goes Steve Clays for Racecraft Esports by on their right side through turn 12 once again. It looks like Del Rio is going back to a fuel saving strategy.
Might be trying to make sure just a little bit that the fuel is good. Mind you, some teams, they take a slight touch bit less of fuel. Torque Freak Racing only had a 33-second pit stop for comparison's sake. Everyone else in the top 4 had 39 seconds or longer for their stops, whether it was trying to have a driver swap prepared or to put back in the race driver, or whether it was just more fuel being put in the tank to make sure they can actually go in attack mode, I think like IVRA might have done.
That's looking to be what these guys are looking for as well. So David Del Rio might be trying to just stay on the back end of Fetterman for now and might attack when we're a little close to the end, potentially within 15 minutes of the race ending. We have just about 27.5 minutes left as of right now on RacespotTV. So far, Fetterman managing to hold on to that lead for now, but who knows for how long.
How long indeed? If you want to keep up with the stopwatches from the different drivers and keep up with where they're at on the racetrack, be sure to go to Racespot.tv/timing to keep up with the timing and scoring of today's event. Of course, on social media, if you haven't followed along, you can go to @ClubSport Series, #DGFX to keep up with the social media revolution. Well, the sim racing team looking to try and make a relegation to P number 2. I don't even know what that exactly would mean in a written title, other than, of course, trying to leapfrog the spot. In other words, Del Rio still wanting to fight for a spot. He's been up in basically since the drop of the green flag in that top 2.
He's definitely been looking for it, and he has been running really strong this whole race. So Del Rio showing how fast that car is, again, I'm beginning to think he's going for a fuel-saving strategy at this point in time, because he has had so many times where he's been so close to the back end. If he was going for position, people would be asking, why on earth are you not moving out to make that move? But it looks like he is definitely going to be going for a fuel-saving position strategy at this point.
On top of that, why would you try and make it more difficult to catch up to the race lead and try and dice and battle? They're actually quicker by 3 seconds a lap right now than Torque Freak Racing Maggots right now. That's how quick they are on this racetrack. Why force the issue and lose yourself time when you know you have a chance, for one, if you work together, to maybe catch up with the way they're gaining 2 seconds a lap like last time by, but two, potentially end up losing that spot anyway if you make the move too early.
And here is Torque Freak Racing Maggots with Philip Roberts. You can see just in the background there, those two cars just came over the crest. That was Dirk Fetterman and David Del Rio right in tow. So they are on the exact same stretch of ground right now. So if they continue to close at that 2-3 second a lap rate like they have been, they actually could potentially work their way up and try to go for that move around that Philip Roberts. So we could potentially have a 3-car fight for the lead coming to the conclusion of this final race.
Looking on board now to the left side window netting of David Del Rio. This time by at the stripe for Torque Freak Racing, it was a 123. For this time by, pardon me, that was Torque Freak Racing. Even White, it's 139 for Maggots. 137s, even with the traffic for the two drivers lined up bumper to bumper for second and third. They're gaining time and bunches right now. They're just separated by about 2-3 corners the distance between them and the race lead. 24 minutes and approaching to go in this one.
Just about, so time is beginning to slowly tick out. We are within the final half hour of the whole season, and Fetterman got really loose coming over turn 5, and they lost a couple of tenths coming over the rumble strips for turn 5. So Del Rio gonna check up just a little bit to make sure he doesn't drive through Fetterman, because if he ends up spinning Fetterman out, not only would there be a potential penalty for Del Rio, which is the last thing he wants right now, it would also mean that he no longer has any drafting help on these straights, and he would no longer be able to go for that lead on Philip Roberts.
Yes, you don't want to have that happen this late, because I've said this in many broadcasts. You can recover from an incident maybe at the start of the race and get a solid finish. It's harder to do so when you don't have the time remaining on the clock like you do now. For these drivers, these MX-5s at least, they only have an estimated 16 laps to go to make this work. That's not a lot of time to recover if you have any contact right here, right now.
So Del Rio being very, very patient here. He's going to be waiting likely until very late in this race, or I mean, we already are late in this race, so he's going to be waiting until even later in the late portion of this race to try to make a move on Dirk Fetterman.
This time by, they're about the exact same time. Compare that again to the lead, though, with Maggots. They actually gain another second plus that time by, in part because where the traffic was reaching Torque Freak Racing, as they constantly lose the time without the draft. Should also note that battle we've been keeping up with for the Porsches, for the Sport class today. Time is going back and forth and staying a bit even now, as it looks like the leader has slid around for the MX-5s.
Not a full spin, but Philip Roberts, he got really sideways coming over turn 5, went into the sand with the right sides, managed to hang on to that car, but that's lost him on a ton of time now on the cars behind him with that slide and potentially overheated tires. Replay up on his screen now, he comes over the curves, gets onto the curves, goes off. If we could get an onboard shot, that would definitely show how far-sighted that car got, because let me tell you, those cameras, they really don't do it justice.
Asking you shall receive from Hugo Wee as you look on board. And you see there, he knew right in the apex that he was about to go off in the sand.
It's a very close call from Philip Roberts, lost on a ton of time to those cars in front of him, so he is really going to have to keep an eye out on his mirrors now, because they are closing more and more with every passing lap, and if he makes another mistake like that, it might just be the push that these drivers behind him need to catch right up.
Yeah, look at this. They're gaining more and more time. They're only separated by about just a corner now. Even with the traffic again, it looks like it's Torque Freak Racing starting to collapse towards the late stages. This time by another 2 seconds gain by Del Rio and Fetterman. They are going to try and reel them in quickly. Look at the track map. That's the difference between the two. Always separate about a corner or two at the max to the S's.
Not a lot of time separating them. You look at it visually and you realize that it looks like they're pretty far apart when you just look at it, but you look at a track map like this, they are not that far apart at all. They are within the same camera shot of each other now. So these two drivers that are drafting each other, they know exactly what they're doing. I think Fetterman is now well aware of what Del Rio is doing. He's trying to work his way up, and I don't think Fetterman's going to be complaining at all, because it would mean that even Fetterman will be able to have a shot at the lead as well.
This has a huge chance to be interesting for sure at this one. You see there, they've closed even more time. Roberts is struggling on every corner exit right now for Torque Freak. Can Fetterman and Del Rio keep lined up is the question, and trying to avoid any contact. They're separating now by half a straightaway. With the draft, they're staying in line. Del Rio thought about a slight move, still able to tuck in behind. There's a chance they can make the pass the next 2-3 laps if they keep the pace up.
There absolutely is, and these two drivers, they have been doing a very good job of making sure that they're keeping off of each other. There's been absolutely no contact between them whatsoever. A couple of close calls here and there, but so far they've been very, very respectful of each other.
We'll give a quick update as soon as we can, because as we're going on, there's a battle going side by side. It's for second for the Porsches in the sport class. NAB Racing going 3 wide with a prototype. They have reeled in Benjamin Fisher and Fisher Motorsport with the traffic, able to pick up at least a few tenths the past couple laps. Up to second they go, and up to unofficial P1.
And Tom Van Pook can be late on the brakes. The Porsches do have the power on the straights. The Porsches are actually faster than your prototype field on the straights, which is why he was able to repass Tom Van Pook for Graphite Racing right ahead of him.
To reiterate, Kurt Schaaf for Porsche Basel by Sork Rennsport Esports not running for points. That would put him down the grid in terms of the overall points total, since there was no driver swap. This would technically put the official lead to June for this race, depending on how things cycle on after the race. Again, unofficially though, the 168 is up in front for the class. Let's head back to those MX-5s though, because again, the gap is shrinking even quicker now. They're just out of the range of the draft, because if you look to the windshield of Fetterman, you'll see right down the hillside a car that is orange and blue that is going to be right in the middle of the crosshairs of Fetterman.
Philip Roberts has got to have put everything he has in that car, and he needs to push for it now. This is the time when he really needs to go. He knows that they're closing in, no doubt by now. He has been told this several times over. He knows that he does not have the pace on his own, so he's going to be trying to pick out probably some good defensive points to drive in, and he's going to be almost going to be looking for those points as these drivers begin to close that gap slowly and slowly, more and more each lap. Under 20 minutes left now, and it's all but certain that Dirk Fetterman and David Del Rio, they will be catching them. We will have a 3-way battle for the lead.
Things are about to get way more interesting in this one. An estimated 15 laps to go for Nagel on the track. For the Porsches, an estimated 13 laps. For the MX-5s, they're down to an estimated 11.5 laps as they go across the rumble strips. They're only separated now again still by the half straightaways on these long runs. Roberts ran a 138.7 last time. In the 137s for the two cars that you see on your screen, they have closed the gap now to under 10 car lengths.
And as we ride on board Del Rio, that car that you see right up there, that is Philip Roberts. So Philip Roberts, he's going to be sweating nervously by now, checking those mirrors every few seconds. He recognized that they're closing in, and this straight right here is where those two cars gained the most time on him. This is where he really needs to be able to try to put the power down. He really needs to be able to try to gain as much as he possibly can through the run from turn 1 all the way down through 5, because that's probably the one area where these two cars drafting behind him don't gain anything on him, as Del Rio almost drives through the back of Fetterman.
Yeah, they nearly tapped once again, going to the apex of 10-11, of 10A, I should say. That means Del Rio, because the checkup lost a little bit of ground. However, they're still picking up time to that orange and blue Torque Freak Racing Megas car. It's going to get nerve-wracking even more so now. A 139 this time for Roberts. 137s now for the rest of the top three. They're now in range and in the draft of Roberts.
this is all going to come to a head. It's all going to come down to the run down to turn 9. I believe that is where they will catch them, either there or on the next lap. They are gaining so much time, and it is all paid off for Del Rio and Fetterman's little strategy that they've got going here. It is paid off for them as here they come, closing in more and more. Do you think they'll catch them by turn 10?
That is a strong possibility. We'll have to see how it's handled through 6 and 7. This has been an area Torque Freak Racing has lost a lot of time, especially turn 7. Fetterman and Del Rio much more later on the brakes than Roberts. They have pulled within the draft. They might not be in range quite yet, but they can get in the move for the possible next lap or so. Roberts starting to take the defensive line, though, as they start letting the traffic go on by. That is, again, the Porsche leader for the sport class going on by in Kirchhoff, but that might actually help Fetterman picking up some draft from him. It's down to 3 car lengths as they enter turn 10. They have a chance to make this pass.
They're going to have to be patient here. You cannot lose your patience. Not now. Fetterman's right on him as they exit turn 11. They're all right running nose to tail, and there's Tom Van Putten in his graphite racing car. He's waiting because he realizes how important this battle is for them. He's going to wait until there's a bit of a straight line area before he tries to go to get around him. Here comes Fetterman, going to make the move down to the turn number 1. They're going to be side by side through turn 1, and Philip Roberts, nothing he can do.
They're going to go 3 wide now into the S's. Bouncing around his Fetterman as he checks up. Fetterman able to hold on. Check up now for the little sim racing car. Fetterman takes it to the outside lines. A bunch of traffic bunches up behind them. Can Fetterman make it cleanly? He's able to take the class lead, but they still have 3 different prototypes trying to cut on through the traffic behind. Fetterman getting a cushion now because of Tigler for Sork Racing Orange.
This is the definition of a hornet's nest right here of what's going on. Somehow, through all that chaos, Dirk Fetterman managed to take the lead, almost doors S-Rock Racing Orange as they came on through. Now he has to take a less than optimal and letting the Porsches through, and now Philip Roberts can work with JV Del Rio to try to close that out with the exact same strategy.
Fisher giving a bump draft to Fetterman as he got loose on the corner exit. Now, if you're Del Rio, he has to try and break on by and get by the draft to keep up with Fetterman. All the lap traffic is through. They got the clean track. As this is all shuffled down, the junior team has started to reel in this battle at the top of the hill.
It's all going to come to a head right here. Will Del Rio look for the move? He will. Del Rio going to go on the inside of Philip Roberts. Philip Roberts going to run a little wide in turn 10A. Holds the apex through 10B. Still by side of the exit. Del Rio manages to hold on. Can he get the move down on the exit of turn 12? Doesn't look like he will. So Philip Roberts going to maybe, oh, it will. Del Rio manages to pull that outside line through the final corner off the track. And Fetterman, that is exactly what he wants to see, as though two cars side by side in his mirror.
Just the second time that has worked today for a driver. Up to second is Del Rio. Now he's got to close up a lot of time and quick. He lost about 15 car lengths to the back bumper of Dirk Fetterman. Meanwhile, the struggles continue for Roberts. There's a chance he might fall off the podium now, because that car we talked about that had a penalty at the start of the race, having a lane change violation / start zone penalty, and Petra, he's now closing into that orange and blue machine. What do you think's going on to this car?
Philip Roberts, that car, it doesn't look the most healthy on the front end. It looks like he took a couple of excursions through the grass, so potentially maybe some damage to the underside of the car, but I don't think that's the problem. Torque Racing Vegas, they have held on to the lead for so long as Del Rio goes a little off on the exit of turn 7, and you saw how fast Del Rio tried to get around Philip Roberts. Do you think Del Rio thought that maybe drafting with Roberts would not give him as much of a benefit as if he were to just go on at low wolf?
I think that was the possibility. He knew he was drafting with what could be the potential leader if he can't reel him in with Dirk Fetterman. He knew these two drivers, I think, in 1 and 2, knew the struggles going on. Now, if you're Del Rio, he's got to find a way to reel in 2.8 seconds with one of the toughest drivers in the entire MX-5 community on iRacing behind the wheel and picking up time on the exits. Now the question is, can he reel back in under 12 minutes to go on the clock? This time by at the stripe, you see the times on the bottom side. He lost 2 seconds on lap 79. This time by, he lost another half a second.
I'm not sure it could really go either way at this point, but if Dirk Fetterman manages to hold on, then he took advantage of that situation perfectly, managed to use all that traffic as a pick to not only work his way around Phillip Roberts, but keep Del Rio behind him. So it would have shown absolutely masterful driving from Fetterman if he were to make that work and keep the lead for the remainder of this race. And at this point in time, I honestly am having a hard time seeing Del Rio being able to close that gap, because right now he does not have the draft.
Yeah, he has nobody to work with. His teammate is still ways back, for example. He's going to be having to do this based on pure strength and skill alone, not just the toe that he could get down the straight. On the brights, there is only one positive. He could try and get it from some of the lap traffic, but that's not the optimal thing. You can only get so much of that draft by a car that's going sometimes 40, 50 miles per hour, potentially as quicker as you see him try and get the draft in the Porsche.
Well, that's exactly the point, because if you try to get in as soon as you can, you risk hooking that car that's lapping you, and then you have a fierce penalty coming your way. And if the only really real place you can actually get these drafting areas from is on the straightaways, but they're going so much faster, like you said, that they're gone out of the draft by like another 2 seconds from then. You really cannot gain a whole lot, like maybe a couple tenths at the most.
Meanwhile, look what's going on your screen. This is for the first overall points for the day, potentially. June still holding on for second on the board to Fisher right now. This has been nearly back and forth. You've seen him nearly make contact for the S's, in fact, now, as Fisher Motorsport was able to reel back in Nab Racing thanks to the traffic.
And so Benjamin Fisher is going to be looking to do everything he can. June going on defense. Will Fisher go for a dive bomb? He will not. He's going to keep it in line, go for the slow in, fast out. June holds that apron, and he's going to be able to keep
trouble now. Pardon me, Phillip Roberts just got turned by one of the huge Jazz cars. Going through the S's, they made contact with the back bumper. Huge Jazz did, and around went Phillip Roberts to lose him even more so time. That was contact coming towards the end of the S's through turn 4, heading towards turn 5 that spun him around. As that went on, Fisher Motorsport has just made the pass on back by now.
And that was not just a pass, that was a pass around the outside of turn 1 of all places. So Benjamin Fisher making a beautiful pass around the outside of Martin June, who I think if this is to back on out of it, replay up in your screens of this one, they can see Fisher go right around the outside of June coming through turn 1. How on earth do you manage to pull that off?
Well, that's something I had to ask you. You're the one who mentioned before we started off today, you could get a jump pass done in turn 1, but it'd be extremely difficult. That was extreme difficulty because they were swerving back and forth. You had a car on the defensive line, but Fisher Motorsport was able to just outpower them on the outside line.
And Benjamin Fisher, it's hard enough to make a pass through turn 1 going on the inside, but when you try to make it around the outside, I honestly have never seen that happen in my life. So that was a first for me, and I'm not going to complain about that because that was beautifully executed from Benjamin Fisher, who's going to try to use Simon Esches as a pick here, successfully, might I add. Simon Esches holding out Martin June just a little bit on the exit of turn 10B, but Martin June still has the draft of Fisher ahead of him.
By the way, what's happening, you might be asking, with the club lead? It's shrinking, and fast. A full second just about gained by Ava Vervatic last time by. On Ava Vervatic, I should say, as Dirk Fetterman has seen the gap shrink, in part due to traffic reaching him at the wrong times, to again under 10 car lengths, and Del Rio is starting to get towards the edge of his draft.
I'm not sure yet. It could go either way for me still, because remember, we have less than 10 minutes to go. That is not a lot of time for these drivers to make something work. I still feel personally like Fetterman could have managed to hang on for that lead. I just don't think Del Rio is close enough. However, he could very well prove me wrong. It would not be the first time.
See them going back down the hill. Fetterman, again, a 138.3 last time by a 137.4 for Del Rio. Just out of the 5s, in fact, just a tenth out of that. With the rally up together, it's a 2-3, by the way, for the World of Sim Racing teams, senior and junior teams. This time by Fetterman brings it back to the 137s. Near identical times, in fact, for the top 2.
Nearly identical times for the top 2 indeed. So these drivers, they're very evenly matched. I feel like it would be down to a mistake on Dirk Fetterman's part as he gets 2 wheels over the rumble strips of turn 3. almost sent that car off and into the grass. So Fetterman beginning to click those apexes just a little bit more, trying to put the power down and run away with this lead as much as he possibly can. He does not want Del Rio to close into him because Del Rio, he's a very experienced driver, just as Fetterman is. So to see these two fighting out for the lead with so little time left, if Del Rio does manage to catch him, I feel like it's going to end with one of them into the grass.
I mentioned this before at the top of the broadcast. This team nearly flipped their car over in qualifying with Salmon behind the wheel when it weight shifted hard on the left side tires and nearly went off into the grass. It looks like that car is starting to, with the less fuel now towards the end of this race, struggle with a bit of that weight shifting that we're starting to see, especially to the S's. That's where Fetterman seems to be losing so much time, especially off of turn 5, where he seems to be struggling a slight touch to get out of the gap into the gas. Del Rio, however, a bit more smoother. Fetterman, however, is getting the time back, it seemed, into turn 10.
So these drivers, they're going to have to try to make something work for something here coming on into the final minutes of this race. And Martin June also beginning to close right back into Benjamin Fisher. Just about ran him over in turn 10 A and 10B. Right on the back through turn 12. Has to back out of it to avoid running him over right at the tail of your screen there. So Martin June just about having a couple of close calls with the back end of Benjamin Fisher. They're approaching David Del Rio now. How will this play into your fight for the club lead?
Well, this is not going to help whatsoever the World of Sim Racing machine. They check up and lose about a second. He's going to have to hope Fetterman gets even held up more so now. As they get on by quickly, Fisher still defending June. Again, they are battling for second on the ticker board at the moment. Can he hold on is the question. They got Dirk Fetterman to still clear. They might reach him, though, at a wrong spot. That will slow them down. No, they're going to zoom on by. Fetterman sandwiches between the two cars and holds up his fellow color car and lets him run by as a dive bomb. That was a dive bomb and a half, as that's going to lose time for June.
Martin June going off, almost comes up and right in front of Dirk Fetterman, so that made Fetterman had to check up, and he was offline as well, coming through turn 7 as well, so that closed in a little bit more for I'm looking at the wrong car here, sorry, for David Del Rio, who is still struggling to close that gap. I think it's over, though, for that fight for the Mazda lead. We're going to keep eyes up here, though, on this fight for second place in your Porsche field.
That lost a bit of time, but look who's gaining it back. June's much more faster out of 11 and 12. He's able to close it again back a few more car lengths after losing about maybe half a second from that side spin going into turn 7. Now it's going to be a matter how can he get the job done. There's an estimated 4 laps to go. Knowing that there's this little time, under 4 minutes to go, if you are June, where do you make the move and how do you do it, knowing you got one shot?
Turn 10A. That's my only answer. You have to do it in turn 10. If you have one shot and one shot only, turn 10 is the way to do it. You can have the biggest run coming over there. If not through there, then off in turn 12. That'd be my only suggestion. You have to get it done in one of those 2 corners. Don't risk it anywhere else, because turn 6 and 7, it's just too tight and too easy to defend for Benjamin Fisher, who's right ahead of him. Stay in behind, get the run coming up to turn 10, because you'll be going at least 5-10 miles an hour faster with the draft.
And he's going to follow along with the draft. He's just at the edge of it. Fisher was much more faster out of 7 to be able to get a bit of a run. Now, can he get back on up? We'll see how he attacks. He's been much more aggressive in this part of the racetrack. Fisher's backed it up much more. A bit of a slight lock for June, in fact, as he gone on through, but is still able to recover that time. We've seen so many times today to be able to pick up some time in as the points leader for the overall standings in the class. He nearly runs over an MX-5 and punts him.
So Marcel Unger, for Real Pixel Motorsport, that car once again, wrong place, wrong time, takes a hard shot to the left side wall. That car is absolutely demolished because of that hard shot, and that will no light doubt put Martin June out of contention for that lead of the Porsche field.
And that was another wrong place at the wrong time for that machine. But it looked like in that case, knowing the circumstances, it looked like June wasn't going to lift. He tried to lift at the very edge when he knew there was a chance he can make contact. But I think at that point, while that will potentially lead to a race control review, at that point, I think it was the case of, I have to go. I have no time to check up. If I check up, my chance is done.
Oh, absolutely. Like, you're not thinking about consequences at this point in time because we are in the final 3 minutes of this race and we're in the final round, the championship round. These drivers are thinking, we need to go now. So he was just trying to get that car out of his way. You saw him try to make the effort and unfortunately just couldn't crank the wheel to the right hard enough because he was not letting go for anything.
And he's trying to still fly under 90 seconds to go on the clock right now for overall race leader in SimRC Strawberry. Sticking with this though, because that lead is nearly 2 laps now. In fact, is 2 laps. Nab Racing, they're still behind now by 6 car lengths with a couple more estimated runs around the circuit. Once again, Fisher Motorsport backs up the corner through 1. Nab Racing's June attacks it more aggressively and runs the bottom side where the rubber's at. This is though where he loses a little bit of time here and there trying to run off the rumble strips and pick up any amount of lost time he's had. Under 50 seconds to do it.
It's all going to come down to this. It's going to be down in the very last lap. Benjamin Fisher loses a lot of time through the S's that time. Martin June so much stronger through the first sector of the racetrack. He's going to put the power down coming into turn number 6. He's got so little time to make something work. He has to get these laps perfectly. He cannot afford to make even the smallest mistake. The smallest twitch could mean he could be ending his race.
Keeping with the battle, one thing to note, Condiner did just flip against the wall down the front stretch. We will stick with the battle though. It's getting intense. Will it be enough time for Nab Racing's the question? They are in the draft. 10 seconds on the clock. They'll have about a full lap to do it. As the white flag gets ready to display on the racetrack, they won't be able to get the pass done now, but for Rudolf Nagel, he'll take the white flag for SimRC DE Strawberry. They've been having a heck of a day in the prototypes. They will have a full track to get around. So will these 2 drivers. Huge run for Nab Racing. Not able to make the move yet. They are very close indeed to 2 car lengths. This could be the final shot for June.
He's got one shot. He's got to make it now. If there's ever a lap to do it, it's got to be this one. He only has one chance left. One more time around. It has to be into turn 10.
Still trying to follow on with the S's. We'll follow on with the overall race later, though. SimRDE Strawberry. We talked about their speed at the top of the broadcast and a couple times today. In the prototype class, they showed speed throughout the season. Won at Daytona. Had as much as a full lap lead at some races this year. Didn't gain any points at Laguna Seca due to driver requirements. Struggled at Silverstone. Dominated at Zolder. And today, after a couple more corners, they will win 3 of the 5 rounds in Season 2. SimRCDE Strawberry wins the Proto class for the final race of Season 2 for the Club Sport Series. And as that goes across the line, let's check it back with Nab Racing. One more chance for this spot as he locks it up. June hooks it off into the sand and throws away a chance at what could be a potential win. Fisher Motorsport will come away in an unofficial second. That might get first though in the points. Nab Racing will finish second. Porsche Basel by Sorg Esports technically first, but they did not make a driver swap in this race. Let's take one last look.
I'm absolutely speechless with what just happened there. Just lost the back end coming around. Oh my goodness.
And that was, I think, a period where he knew that was his final chance. Tried to push too much, spun the car out. A driver, though, that was able to push at the right place at the right time. Even with 3 wide traffic, was able for Vatic. They will come across the stripe, potentially with the straightaway to go. Porsche Basel by Sorg Rensport Esports. Also first on the board for the time being for the Porsches. Well, again, the results unofficial. Dirk Fetterman only a couple more corners for his race to get across the stripe. He'll come away with the victory for Ava Vervatic. A crazy race for the club win today. A 3rd round victory for the Season 2 session. Now for the Club Sport Series goes Ava Vervatic. A wild one today at Road Atlanta. What started off as calm, knowing the championships were on the line, picked up quick. And in the end, the quickest car was SimRCE DE Strawberry, winning by a dominant 2 laps to win over Graphite Racing. The rest of the field All 5 drivers trying to fight for a chance for the championship struggled. SK Motorsports, 7 laps down. Sork Racing Orange, 2 different crashes, 17 laps down. WR Racing B, DNF'd, more than 30 laps down to round out the 5 drivers in the class today. Meanwhile, it was a cracker of a finish for 3rd overall and 4th on back. For the sport class today, it was Porsche Bezo by Sork Rennsport Esports that came away with the unofficial win in the sport class today compared to those prototypes. Fisher Race Motorsport, they made a driver swap, however. They could, in theory, move up in the official results. That could be set to change though. Again, unofficial is their 2nd spot, Nav Racing unofficially 3rd. Team Vikings Valhall 4th, with Sim Sport News rounding out the top 5. Gold Racing Team White, Bombshell Motorsports, Huge S Blue, Racecraft Esports, German Sim Racing Friends. They still come away with the top 10 despite having a very unfriendly racetrack to them. The rest of the field on your screen struggles for Huge Ass Gold after technical problems at the start of the race. They finish 11th behind the Friends team. The orange German sim racing car finished 13 laps down, while the real Pixel Motorsport machines ended up pointing to the garage area very early on, 77, 79 laps down respectively overall to the prototype, 70 and 72 laps overall to the class lead. Let's look at the rest of your results for the club drivers now. IVRA ClubSport came away with an overall victory of 6 seconds after what was an intense 3-wide battle with themselves, the World of Sim Racing team and Torque Freak Racing Maggots. They finished 1st, 2nd, 4th respectively. The junior team passed them after a big collision in the final moments with one of the Huge S cars for the Maggots car. GT Temple Racing finished 5th, Team Vikings in 6th, Real Pixel Motorsport in 7th, with the Gold Racing team and Bombshell Motorsports. They did not make the grid, rounding out the drivers who started off today's race. 29 drivers look to gain points for the season finale. It was an intense one here for today's action at Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta. And one of the drivers that was able to conquer it here on RacespotTV was the man who came away with the MX-5 victory for the club class. Dirk Fetterman, after making a pass in 3-wide and lap traffic action, comes away with the club class victory today. Dirk, how are you feeling about what was an intense finish for you guys today?
I don't know what happened exactly on lap 79. It was just, 3 wide, okay, there's traffic, we have to manage it somehow, and somehow it works out.
How difficult was it to try and gain the time, because at one point your team was all the way back in about 5th trying to work together with some of the other cars at that time. How difficult was it to try and gain so much time towards the end of the race once you got into the car on lap 33?
Yeah, Bastian didn't feel that well today and was down on pace, but somehow the other teams got really unlucky in the pits. I don't know, at one point we gained over 10 seconds on one team over the pit stops, so I don't know what they did there, but yeah, somehow, yeah.
Yes, indeed, for sure in this one. How difficult was it as well with the traffic today? Because it looked like, with that attrition, there was a lot of it, to say the least. Well, how was it from your perspective, trying to gain the time while having, in some cases, 3-4 white battles with lap traffic going by?
Yeah, it was intense. Bastian kept me updated with traffic from behind, the gap and which car, and so I could see where they will catch me and react properly. Yeah, but to be honest, it was less of a hassle than I thought.
Overall, though, your team came away with 3 victories in the season 2 out of the 5 rounds. Now, it's pardon me, 2 overall, I should say. Silverstone, Road Atlanta, 2nd at Zolder. How would you put how IVRA ClubSport's season went in the Club Sport Series this time around?
In the beginning, it was a little bit. Yeah, we struggled a little bit. but in the end we kept on going and we had the pace at the end.
Before we let you go, who would you like to thank, or what would you like to say before we let you go here today?
Just a thank you to Bastian Salmon, my teammate, for, even though he didn't feel well, jumped into the car for one stint so he can drive that.
Congratulations on the class victory today, and hopefully your teammate gets well soon.
Thank you.
And that was Dirk Fetterman coming away with the class victory for Ava Vervatic in the club class today. A heck of a finish for that class today. Let's take in our unofficial sport class leader if we can now of Zork Esports. It's Rene coming into the booth now. Rene Kirchhoff, he's standing by with Nolan Rempel. Nolan?
Thanks.
No.
It was a very tough race. Since the middle of the second stint looked very good, but then I had an incident with a Mazda. Huge apologies to, I think it was the Gold Racing team. That was absolutely my mistake. I was I was not patient at this moment. I did not believe that I'm able to I don't think, or I did not think that I was able to fight for the win. But yeah, set everything on the one and only card I had, and that was not changing the tires on every single pit stop. And in the end, it worked, even though the tires were absolutely dead in the end.
And despite the early incident, you still managed to come away with an impressive win for the sport class. How are your feelings on how the season has gone for the team for you for this season?
To be honest, it wasn't our season. We started with high expectations, to be honest. First race, we were very unlucky. We were fighting for the win, then I had a disconnect. Second race, there was no race luck. We had lots of incidents. We had to retire the car. In Silverstone, my teammate also had a disconnect. Last time we were not able to race as Alex had hardware issues and I wasn't at home. So good way to end up the season. Yeah, but for next season, I think there's a lot more to come. There's still room for improvement.
I think the room for improvement statement is definitely something that a lot of teams can attest to, especially for how things went for the season and for the final race in the ClubSport series today. Before we let you go, is there any final thoughts you had? Any sponsors you wanted to shout out to us or anything?
First of all, I want to thank the guys who are organizing this championship. It was a awesome season, even though we did not perform as we would have expected to perform. And then also big thanks to Zork Rennsport, to all the guys from Zork Rennsport Esports and all our sponsors. Yeah, that's it.
That was René Kirchhoff driving for Porsche Basel by Zork Esports Racing, coming away with the Porsche win for today here at Road Atlanta.
Thank you very much, Nolan. Some good words said on there. Let's talk to the driver who's a part of what is unofficially the sport season overall points champion, NAB Racing's Frank Van Brandwick. He was a part of the first stint. Did run some stints for the team today, I should say, at the beginning of the race up until lap 37. Frank, how was the car today for your team, and how difficult was it to try and fight through the grid?
Well, it was very difficult, especially if you only have to finish on P7 to beat the championship. But yeah, that was really difficult, just to keep the car clean. with this traffic, and it's just, yeah, it was really tense. It was.
Yep, go ahead.
At the end with the fight with Fisher Motorsport was even great, because yeah, we were also both fighting for the championship, so it was nice to have the battle on track as well. Unfortunately, second place or third place was enough for us, but yeah, it was really tense to look at.
How did the car feel, and how did that feel compared to what June wanted in the car? Essentially, how was that car today in terms of how it was set up and how it felt throughout the action?
Yeah, it was really difficult. The car was sliding a lot, and we did not change the tires, so at least that worked better for us. Especially the first few laps is really hard on the tires. In my first stint, it took me 4 laps to get the car in order. It was, yeah, it's just so slippery with the Porsche. Also the incident Martijn had with the Gold Racing team, I think it was. Fortunately, we did not have that much damage of it, so we could just continue our pace. But it was a scary moment.
And speaking of near scary moments, your team had 2 different attempts for a pass. One time into turn 7, one last gasp attempt through turn 10A, trying to push hard to try and get a run through 11 and 12. What was your perspective watching as June was trying as hard as he could to get what could potentially be an official first place?
Yeah, I was not really happy about it, to be honest. He took quite some gamble on those 2 corners. Fortunately, he kept it out of the wall, but it's not fun to look at when you're in the looking at your screen how Martijn is driving. But yeah, I'm confident about Martijn's skills. So yeah, I knew he would do nothing which would jeopardize our championship. But yeah, it was not nice to look at.
Speaking of that, of course, it's been a great season for your team overall. Of course, started off with a win at Daytona. You've been consistent for the most part. Just your worst round was at Zolder. How would you sum up your season in a few short words?
Awesome. Just the start in Daytona set us up for the season, and we had some bad luck, but I think everybody had some bad luck, and yeah, awesome season.
Real quickly, is there anyone you want to thank before we go?
Well, especially the organizers, because yeah, it's just a great championship. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the time, Frank. Congratulations on what is unofficially a series class championship.
Thank you.
That was Frank Van Brandwick coming away for his team. What is third unofficially on the board today? Standing by is Benjamin Fisher now for what could be a potential official first position now. Nolan standing by with Benjamin. Nolan?
Thank you, Justin and Benjamin. Congratulations on the second place in class today. Unfortunately, not as much time as we would have liked, so I'm going to get to the point and talk to you about the fierce fight that we saw between you and Martin June for Nav Racing coming into the final corners of the race today on the last lap that saw Martin June turning around in the background. What were your thoughts as you saw him slowly creeping up over the course of the race and then suddenly just losing it all on his own right behind you?
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. I'm not even sure if I had time to think anything. It all happened so quick. Well, it was certainly an exciting race, and it's a shame that he sort of lost control there. But I was just focused on my own race at that point. I didn't actually see that coming from behind, that he was so close. So it took me by surprise, actually. But after that, I was able to create a little bit of a gap. And that was really good for me to sort of calm my nerves on the final laps. Was definitely a hard battle, but was fantastic to race against those guys at the 108 team. They've been great all season long. So it was definitely an awesome experience to just be part of this. So it's amazing for us to get that first win. I couldn't be more excited. I also want to use this opportunity real quick to say a big thanks to the organizers, and of course I'll also give credit to my teammate Manuel. He has done a fantastic job driving the car today.
And before we let you go, is there anybody else that you would like to shout out today?
I just want to say thanks to my family as well, who have been watching the races here and there when they could, and I appreciate their support as much as the support of all my friends. It's been a long time coming to get that first win, so we have been working awfully hard to get here. So it's all the sweeter to finally get here, and I appreciate everybody's support.
Ladies and gentlemen, Benjamin Fisher, driving for Fisher Motorsport, P2 unofficially for your Porsche Class 4 today here at Road Atlanta.
Thank you very much, Nolan. Let's quickly bring in the man that was a part of the best team for the club class this season, the world of sim racing's David Del Rio joins us in the broadcast booth. Of course, due to time constraints, I have only time for a couple quick questions. David, your team was one of the most consistent all season this year, coming away with 2 first-place victories, as well as a second at Daytona. Quickly talk us through the challenges of this season to try and come away with what could potentially be an unofficial championship for the club series.
Hi guys, thanks, and that was a great championship. And yeah, we train every race, we train a lot, and that's why we were very consistent and make great podiums and even winning some races.
Let me ask you this in terms of that. How difficult was it to try and keep that consistency up on a season or a race-by-race basis, really, especially with some of the attrition at tracks like Laguna Seca we've seen throughout the year?
We focus overall in the management of the traffic. It's difficult because we are very, very, very slow compared with the radicals, and we thought that if you can manage that traffic, you can get great results, even more than be the fastest car in the track.
Now, real quickly before we let you go, is there anyone you want to thank or anything you want to mention before we let you go?
Just to say that that was a great championship, great job from all the staff, and really fun, and hoping to race in the next championship with all of us.
Thank you very much for the time. Congratulations on the second today and the great season.
Thank you.
That was David Del Rio coming away second today in the class. We have one last person that's ready to stand on in. Nolan Rampel's now standing by with Maneas Goldager, I should say, for GRT, the team manager for the team that had a heck of a season for some of its cars and ups and downs for ours. Nolan?
Thank you, Justin. Now, this season have, of course, been very up and down for so many seasons, and I would not doubt to say that your team was no exception. We come to the final race, though, at Road Atlanta, where it's just so incredibly tight and twisty, and there were so many, I guess, heart attack moments for team managers all up and down the field. What were your thoughts as you watched your cars fighting up and down throughout the field?
To be honest, I was crapping myself. I was doing in the master a few laps as well, so I was also a bit under pressure personally. And every time I heard the guys talking, and some of them were saying "ooh" and all bad words, I was suddenly pretty much under pressure, and it was quite tough, not knowing what happened all the time. And I think we worked it out pretty well. We had a tough race, and probably, maybe, we will win the AM championship, but it's not official yet, so.
And hopes are, of course, high for that AM championship going to your team today. What are your thoughts on how the rest of the season has gone?
I think that the most of the season have gone pretty well. The first race was quite hard. Both cars had very big issues, and then the next 3 races we finished on the podium, all of them. And then here in the last race we also had quite a bit of trouble. So I feel like for our first ever season in any league, it's pretty well all in all. And Yeah, generally I founded the team 6 months ago, I believe, 7 months ago. So in this short span of time, I believe we've done a pretty good job at putting it all together and finishing where we finished.
And before we let you go, is there anybody else you'd like to shout out today before we let you go?
I want to shout out all of my drivers and the guys who've made our liveries and the guys who helped building the team to be better.
Ladies and gentlemen, Matthias Goldegger, the Gold Racing Team Manager, here with us today in the booth.
Thank you once again, Nolan. Some great words. Unofficially, in terms of the Prototype Championship for the Radicals, I should say, it is currently, according to Julian Bell, Graphite Racing unofficially the champions there. Representatives not here at the moment after their second place finish 2 laps down. But it's been a heck of a season from start to finish here, Nolan. From start to finish, let's quickly say goodbye to the fans here from the beautiful Michelin Raceway Road, Atlanta. It's been a heck of a drive from start to finish for the ClubSport Series for season number 2. From the crazy confines of Daytona to the attrition-filled runs at tracks such as today in Laguna Seca, the ups and downs for teams such as Huge Ass Blue and Gold, and for others, the dominance in some races and some others. Now, after what was a long 5-month journey, it's time to say goodbye until the next time for the ClubSport Series powered by DGFX Racing. For Nolan Rempel, for Hugo Wee, I'm Justin Prince saying so long from beautiful Georgia, and thank you for being a part of our broadcast throughout the 2019 Season 2 season. Who's going to come away with the next championships? Sure to watch on at DGFXRacing.com to follow up with the most up-to-date news in terms of the series. With that, it's time to say goodbye. Have the rest of your beautiful Saturday and have the rest of a wonderful weekend.